Welcome to another one of my videos. You can help support this channel by subscribing and liking and by grabbing one of my free ebooks. I'll leave a link in the upper right hand corner and a link in the description to my website if you would like to grab one of my free ebooks. Now to the video. In today's video, we are continuing the murder mystery series, Ronin, Have Sword Will Travel, by listening to the second book in How to Frame a Murder, Part 2, Household of Death. If you haven't already listened to Part 1 of How to Frame a Murder, Cat Painting Mystery, I'll leave a link in the upper right hand corner and in the description. If you would also like to purchase How to Frame a Murder, Part 2, Household of Death, it is an Amazon exclusive and is also illustrated, so you can look along as you listen to the audiobook and look at the illustrations. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you'll be able to read the book for free. You'll also find a link here in the upper right hand corner and in the description. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the read.
How to Frame a Murder, Part 2, Household of Death Mystery, by Kristie Lynn Higgins, copyright 2020, Prologue. The conclusion to How to Frame a Murder, Magi. A parallel reality. In a fusion of East and West cultures, the world of Magi existed in an era before the emergence of electricity and the steam engine. The sword was the ultimate weapon and brought order to the planet under the emperor of the Kenjin Empire. The Kenjin Empire had conquered nearly the whole world and had just about succeeded in bringing all of its domain into submission. The Kenjin Empire existed in a delicate balance of power. The shogun was the highest-ranking military officer who wielded command of the world like a well-balanced blade, and he was just under the emperor in authority. The shogun, along with the shogunate, military officers with the title of overlords, reigned supreme over the citizens of the One World Empire. Each overlord ruled a clan, and each clan was made up of samurai houses. Each samurai or lord and their house owed their allegiance to only one overlord who was their master. The samurai were the military nobility and officer caste, and they ruled over a province for their overlord in this social class system. Below each samurai were many wealthy families who governed their own estates and were scattered about the towns of the samurai's province. They supported their samurai house with honor gifts of crops, animals, material, and/or coin, depending on their size and their own wealth. And the samurai houses, in turn, gave tribute to their overlord out of the same materials. Taxes were collected by governors of each town, and the taxes went to road and irrigation maintenance and/or other projects. The Kenjin Empire was broken down into regions, which under the authority of the emperor and shogun were ruled by the overlords. Regions were made up of provinces under the rule of the samurai lords. Provinces were further broken down into towns governed by governors. A governor was placed in charge of each town, but no family, house, or clan owed their allegiance to them. The governors owed their allegiance to the samurai of their province, and the overlord the samurai served. Magi was enjoying a time of peace and prosperity. Rivalries between overlords were fought with words and speeches on the floor of the shogunate house, and not on the battlefield. Bandits were still a problem, but usually only in the remote areas. Peace seemed a thing of everlasting existence, and war was perceived as a mythical beast that only lived in the legends of the past. Horo-sha and Riko formed a duo of crime-fighting investigators. They were well into their first official case together and were investigating a simple theft of a painting, but the case turned horribly wrong when the suspect started dying. 2 people were dead and 1 was near death. Horo-sha had no idea who the mastermind was behind the scheme to frame one of the members of the household. She would have to put her apt mind against an unknown and crafty foe. Horo-sha had already put her honor on the line, but would it be enough to find the murderer, or would the Gaka Estate become a household of death? T haiku. T is no swift judge. T savors time. Careful thoughts. T brings clear focus. Chapter 1. The Swift Judge, minutes before the end of Part 1. The Red Clover Residence. The town magistrate declared, "Gaka Nico, I am here to arrest you for the murders of Kipa, the head guard, and Akino, the groom, and for the attempted murder of Sanba, the house physician." He spoke with the command of his office as he put a hand to his sword and stated, "And by the authority granted to me as town magistrate, I am also here to administer your punishment by a swift beheading." Little warning preceded the one who had become the Swift Judge. Horo-sha's apt mind went blank as a whirlwind of rabid reprisal blindsided her. The mastermind behind the complex plan might want everyone to believe that justice had been the hand behind finding her friend guilty. But Horo-sha had figured out that the scheme must be some sort of revenge. For what? She didn't know. Horo-sha had figured out something terrible was about to happen. But the exact plot had eluded her. She had taken the scheme too lightly, and Nico was about to pay for her oversight. Her mind raced again. She couldn't self-flog for her oversight. Horo-sha needed to focus. Someone wanted her friend dead, but not by their hand. They were using another to bring about this third death. No, third murder. The town magistrate wasn't here for justice. He was here to enact someone's will. Did the town magistrate know that he was a pawn, or was he an unwilling instrument of the scheme? Her mind continued to whirl. Were they trying to take their revenge on Nico, or was their aim to avenge themselves on Eshi by slaying Nico? Horo-sha felt so powerless, as there was nothing she could do or say to change the mind of one who had so quickly come to the conclusion that the mistress of the manor was guilty. A quicksand of skepticism and doubt grabbed hold of her feet and started to drag her into discouragement. So many things filled her mind and cluttered it with distraction. The mastermind scheme had struck, but was it the final blow? It seemed there was more to it, but Horo-sha reached for a branch of faith and dragged herself out of the quicksand of skepticism and doubt. Nico needed her. Her and her apt mind. But if she was going to use her apt mind, she needed to rid her thoughts of everything that was distracting her. Life lessons from tea. Tea, like steel, must be heated before its strength comes out. Chapter 2. A bold move. A Dao sword. It was a single-edged weapon used for slashing and chopping, and not of the Kenjin Empire design. The Dao sword was adopted by the Empire's magistrates as a primary weapon. It was shorter than a katana and wider with a curved edge. Minutes after the town magistrate's declaration of his intent, the Red Clover residence, Horo-sha had to think in haste, so she convinced Eshi to go retrieve the governor, and she had Riko go in search of the samurai detective. She, Gato, and Nico were all staring at the town magistrate. Horo-sha had to bide Eshi enough time to bring back either a stay of execution from the governor or the governor himself. Her mind was her weapon. The town magistrate questioned the Ronin, but I would like to know, just how are you going to stop me? Her mind was her weapon, but she also had another. Horo-sha drew her sword as she turned to the head guard and shouted, Gato, bar the door and let no one else in. She was a student of the Crying Samurai, one of the most skilled swordsmen of their era. Horo-sha placed both hands on the hilt of her katana and told the town magistrate, I will do what I have to. You will not be executing Nico while I am still alive. The town magistrate drew his own weapon, a Dao sword, and said, I did not think a lowly Ronin would try to interfere. Do you still believe you are of nobility? Tell me what samurai house you once belonged to. Tell me the name that once brought you prestige. She wanted to shout her family's name. Horo-sha wanted to declare for all to hear that she belonged to the house of Shakadzuru that once ruled over the Kai province. Her noble house, whose crest was the red-crowned crane, was so magnificent and respected by many. Her heart thundered both in fierceness and in pride as he uttered his challenge. She wanted to declare her family's name, but the priestess and the Crying Samurai had warned her never to mention it again. If she ever did, those who had massacred her family might come after her and finish what they had started. If this moment had happened several weeks ago, she would have gladly declared the name and await those who would try and take her head. Today was different. They might discover her sister, who she thought was dead along with her father and brother, was also still alive. Sakura lived in the next town. Horo-sha couldn't chance that they would try to kill her older sister. She forced her heart to settle down and allowed its fierceness and pride to be quelled. Horo-sha remained unmoved by his prodding. The town magistrate waited to see if the Ronin would react to his jabbing, and when the detective remained calm, he said, Look at you. You have not come to the defense of your house's good name. I forgot you Ronin think you are above most people, but you are actually cowardly samurai. He glanced at Gato as if remembering the head guard was there. And then the town magistrate took a step closer to the Ronin and declared, I will not let you get in the way of justice. She might have quelled her pride and fierceness to defend her house, but Horo-sha would not back down to defend her friend. Before he could engage her in a battle, Horo-sha yelled, I declare the right of Charanji, soul of tea. I took hold of my father's sword. I took up the honor of my house, but more importantly, I will protect my friend's life. Chapter 3. The Delayed Executioner. The Red Clover residence. The town magistrate halted his attack as he questioned, Are you officially challenging me to a duel? Why waste your breath? I am about to fight you. As you know, the right of Charanji is a duel of honor. Horo-sha stated to draw his attention to the challenge and not so much the fight. Your household's honor against mine. The town magistrate thought about what the Ronin had said and decided he didn't need to go headlong into the fight. The Ronin might be trying to trick him, so he needed to figure out what the detective was up to. I accept your challenge, the town magistrate said. Horo-sha demanded, pick a spot and we will begin our duel now. I will pick the spot, but as the challenged, I also select the time, the town magistrate declared after he thought about it. He still believed the Ronin was trying to trick him. So he said, I will be back within the hour to tell you of the place and time of my choice. The town magistrate sheathed his sword and said, No, Ronin, Eshi will not be back in that time. It will take him most of the day to arrive at the governor's estate, and even if he does find the governor at his residence, I doubt he can convince him to delay the execution of Gaka Nico. The Gaka family's influence over politics is weak. He turned and started to leave and stopped at the exit as Gato still had it barred. Horo-sha nodded to him, and Gato allowed him to leave. Gato, quickly go and find 2 guards you trust with your life and have them come here. Hurry, I don't know how much time I have to put my plan into place. He raced out, and then Nico questioned her, why did you issue the right of challenge? If you lose, it will be a strike against my reputation and the reputation of my unnamed house. Horo-sha thought about her past and said, my house fell in one night. I and one other are the only ones left of our once great house. The good name of my family is nearly all that I have left, but I cannot let injustice prevail. She thought she had said enough on the matter. But Horo-sha saw the worry in her friend's face, so she added, my honor would be meaningless if I ever let injustice prevail. Nico questioned, why did you do this? I did this to buy us some time. I had this feeling that something as tragic as another murder was about to happen, but I was unable to stop it. You have been falsely accused. An ogre of reprisal and retribution has been set in motion. I believe I have slowed it down, but I have not stopped it. The terrifying beast, the one that had been a sensation of failure and blindness, morphed into an ogre and broke out of the labyrinth of her mind it was once a prisoner of. Horo-sha had no way of stopping it. You said that I have been falsely accused with such conviction. Nico spoke and then inquired, how do you know that I didn't commit the crimes I am accused of doing? I believe I know you, Horo-sha replied. I also believe a mastermind is at work here. So much time and preparation had to go into this plan to frame you. I still do not understand, Nico said. You abandoned your pride as an investigator and sent for the samurai detective. I did, and I did so for 2 reasons, Horo-sha replied and then confessed, it is getting very dangerous on the Gaka Estate. I sent Riko away so that he will be safe. What is your second reason? Nico questioned. If I have not found the mastermind behind these murders, Horo-sha started to explain. She wasn't sure that was the right approach, so she stated, even if Riko is able to find the samurai detective, by the time they arrive at the estate, it will be too late for me. Nico interrupted as she understood her role in the scheme. Horo-sha went back to the table where they had been having tea. She had returned to self-flogging, so she didn't allow herself to enjoy her favorite pastime. She did encourage Nico to drink as the mistress of the manor still looked tired. A few minutes later, Gato returned with 2 guards. Horo-sha ordered him, Gato, let none enter the Red Clover residence while I am gone. Where are you going? Nico questioned as the young woman stood. I am going to safeguard my life, Horo-sha answered as she picked up the satchel that the boy left behind and exited without another word. Nico turned to the head guard and inquired, what did she mean by that? She. Gato repeated as he turned in the direction Horo-sha had left. His eyes were opened, and he uttered, the Ronin is a woman. Tea kaiku. Clever as green tea. Use the tools given to me. Apt as orange tea. Chapter 4. Safeguard one's own life. The vault room. A guard said that you wanted to see me. The town magistrate spoke as he walked in and found the Ronin. The Ronin had his back to him as he entered, and the Ronin was looking over the body of the groom. The groom and Keepa's body were both on the floor with straw mats covering them. You brought your deputy with you, Horo-sha stated as she turned and faced them, and then she asked, are you afraid I will do something to you before the Charanji? You are a Ronin, he replied. Maybe you would attack me in secret and claim victory in our duel. You have a great dislike for Ronin, but do you also have a dislike for samurai? Horo-sha questioned. He didn't answer her, so she took his silence as an affirmation. Why am I here? The town magistrate questioned. It is about the cases, Horo-sha said as she held out the satchel. I thought I would hand over half of the clues I have gathered so that you couldn't claim in the future that I had an advantage over you in solving the murders. The murders have been solved, the town magistrate maintained. I remember your declaration from before. You seem so sure, she spoke, and then Horo-sha studied his reaction to her question as she asked, what I don't understand is, do you honestly believe you have solved the cases or are you complicit in the false accusation? The town magistrate remained calm and never reacted to her asseveration. She couldn't tell if it was because she was right or if he just didn't bite when she insulted his honor. Horo-sha gave up for the moment and asked as she lifted the satchel, do you want the clues? The town magistrate motioned to the deputy, and the other man took the satchel from the Ronin. The deputy opened the satchel and peered inside. "What do you see?" the town magistrate questioned. The deputy told him, "I see 2 red ribbons, 3 silver coins, and a broken lacquered bamboo stick. Is that all you wanted?" The town magistrate questioned the detective. "You never did tell me your name." "I am Yashiro." "Yashiro, I also want to show you a small dagger that was lying next to the groom." "It is a very unusual dagger," Horo-sha said as she knelt and picked up the small knife that was lying on the floor next to the groom. Horo-sha unsheathed the blade. The town magistrate immediately flinched as if the Ronin would attack him. "Sorry about that," she said as she turned the dagger around and held it by its blade. Yashiro motioned again for the deputy to retrieve the knife. The deputy started toward her, and Horo-sha pulled back her arm and asked, "Are you that afraid of me that you can't even take a small blade from my grasp?" "I am holding it out handle first." She offered it again to the town magistrate and said, "Be careful. A snail's tooth is known to be very strong." "A snail's tooth?" Yashiro questioned as he glanced at the knife and saw the snail that engraved the blade. He snarled at the Ronin and then seized the knife as he said, "Snails have no teeth." She thought about arguing with him about the fact but decided it didn't matter that he was wrong. It only mattered that she had succeeded in her mission, a victory paid for with a trickle of plasma and a paper cut like burn. Yashiro examined the blade and said, "It has blood on it." His face wrinkled with perplexity as he added, "It is fresh blood." "It is mine," Horo-sha told him, hiding the significance of the cut. "You nicked me when you took the blade. No harm done." He examined the blade again and asked, "The knife is unique, but beyond that, I see no significance in it." "I also have found no significance in it, but I also didn't want to keep this new potential clue to myself." Yashiro set the knife on the stone table and started to leave the vault room. He paused and said, "I have decided our duel will take place in 20 minutes, and it will take place in the south courtyard." "I will be there," Horo-sha stated. She muttered to herself once the town magistrate and his deputy were some distance away. "I will be there now that I have safeguarded my own life." She went over to the stone table and picked up the knife that actually belonged to her. Horo-sha sheathed the blade as she decided on a suitable name for the knife. All fine blades should have a name, and though it was small, the knife she purchased a few days ago was still exceptionally crafted. She would call the knife Snail's Tooth. Horo-sha had lied to the town magistrate in a way. The knife was lying next to the groom, but only because she had set it there on the ground before the town magistrate, and the deputy had entered the vault room. Horo-sha had safeguarded her life, and now she could face the town magistrate in combat. Life lessons from tea. Violence and tea should never mix, but both are also necessary. Chapter 5. The Duel. The Red Clover Residence. Horo-sha informed Gato and Nico that she was heading to her duel. They were both notably worried for her, but neither of them said anything. What could they say? The rite of Charanji was a duel between 2 warriors. It settled grievances or proved which warrior was superior, and once it was proclaimed, the issuer was honor-bound to complete it. She issued the challenge, so she would have to see it through. The South Courtyard. Horo-sha arrived and many people had already gathered there. The steward, the housekeeper, the cook, the kitchen girl, the 2 housemaids, a few guards not on duty, some of the male servants, and Uncle Tadao and 5 of his guards. One of his guards stood close to him and told Uncle Tadao what was going on around them as his eyesight was failing. His new wife and her lady's maid along with one of their guards stayed behind at their residence. Yashiro and his deputy arrived a short time later. Horo-sha went and stood in the center of the courtyard, and Yashiro came and joined her. "I am curious about something," Yashiro began. "If I had asked for a reward, then you would also be able to ask for one. Since I asked for no reward and I was the one who challenged, you can ask for no reward if you should win. You do like to use lots of words to get to your point. Are you doubting your skills, Ronin?" Yashiro questioned. The town magistrate didn't wait on an answer and stated, "My deputy heard that you dueled a swordsman named Kaido in the next town. My deputy was impressed that you won against his lightning strike technique, but I am not. I might not have been trained as a samurai, but my sword skills are excellent." "Let us begin," Horo-sha spoke. She was not up for talking to him as she needed to return to her investigation. Horo-sha drew her katana and held the scabbard in her other hand as if it was a weapon, and then she took a defensive position against him. She glanced at her left thumb where she had been nicked by the town magistrate when he took Snail's Tooth from her grasp, and then she told him, "We will see how you fare against my technique." Yashiro drew his Dao sword and immediately attacked. He quickly slipped under the Ronin's guard and cut the Ronin across his right side, or at least Yashiro thought he had. The Ronin made some movements with his sword as if he had blocked his attack, and then the Ronin stood there unharmed with only a cut across the material of his kimono. The town magistrate suspected that the Ronin had somehow been able to move his body out of the way of his blade at the last second. Yashiro decided to use the same attack but swipe much deeper this time. It was very apparent to Yashiro that he was a lot faster than the Ronin. The town magistrate attacked again, and Horo-sha waited until he went for her side once more. She didn't worry about defending herself but countered once Yashiro had passed her. She slashed at him and cut him across his right forearm. Horo-sha didn't intend to kill or even maim him but only injure him slightly. Blood trickled from his wound. She used her scabbard while he was distracted by his injury and struck him several times using a weaponized acupressure technique. "I have immobilized your right arm and soon you will lose use of it," Horo-sha explained. And then she declared, "Yield, and I will not strike you down." Yashiro couldn't believe how quickly the Ronin had used some sort of martial arts version of acupuncture or something similar against him. His arm was growing numb, and he was starting to lose use of his fingers. He could barely hold onto his sword. Yashiro snarled at the victor. The Ronin had tricked him into believing he was slow when in fact, the Ronin had to be extremely fast, for he never saw the Ronin block his blade during either of his attacks. "Yield now or the duel will continue," Horo-sha declared one last time as she prepared to strike him with her blade. "I yield," Yashiro said. Horo-sha lowered her sword and sheathed it. Thanks to the blessing the priestess gave to her long ago, Horo-sha was able to survive another duel with an opponent whose skills were superior to hers. She had used her one-cut technique in the past in her pursuit of finding the one person responsible, but since finding her older sister alive, Horo-sha dropped the pursuit of revenge. She was content to help people with her gifts and her blessing. She walked away from the town magistrate as the deputy moved to his side. "You surprise me, Ronin," Uncle Tadao spoke once he heard the Ronin's footsteps approach him. "You are young, but you must be very skilled with the sword." I could not see the duel, and my guard is not the best storyteller when it comes to informing me of what was going on. But for you to force Yashiro to yield is a feat in itself. He asked as if what he had been saying also had to do with his next question. "Why do you defend Nico?" It is apparent by the clues the town magistrate gathered, clues you yourself also examined, that she is the murderer. "How well do you know Nico?" she inquired. "I can honestly say I detested her the moment Eshi brought her home as his bride. She was never rude to me or my first wife, but something about the way Eshi brought her into our family has bothered me even until today. Eshi told me Nico came from a modest family. They had money but no wealth. They did own farmlands. Her family fell on hard times and then both of her parents died. I believe Nico married Eshi only because he was wealthy. I do not dislike her for marrying for money. Many have done so on both sides to attain wealth. Maybe I dislike that she never provided him with any more children. Wives should provide children for their husbands. It is their function to provide the next generation." She had nothing to say to his statement and had no questions for him at that time. So Horo-sha left, heading for the house physician's residence. The kitchen girl joined her as she walked. "I can't figure out something," Musum spoke as she walked beside the Ronin. Horo-sha glanced at the kitchen girl but said nothing to her. "How did you really defeat the town magistrate? You seem to move slower than him and yet you managed to block his fatal blow twice." Horo-sha continued to ignore her, and Musum upped and stopped when the cook called after her. "I will figure it out," the kitchen girl yelled after the Ronin. "I like puzzles." Soul of tea. "I defeated the one who would have taken my friend's life. I defeated him, but I have not stopped him. I must gingerly consider my next move as I consider a selection of rare and costly tea." Chapter 6. Looking for the heart of the investigation. The Red Clover residence. Nico had held in her fears and anxieties while she waited to hear the outcome of the duel, and when the young woman returned, Nico couldn't help but snap at her as she asked, "Why did you do such a dangerous thing?" "2 reasons, Horo-sha replied as she never considered the unintended worry she had put her friend through. "First reason, Yashiro will not try to convince the guards to side with him and take you by force, not until the governor has decided what to do with you. If he does, it will appear to the others that he is trying to take revenge for his defeat by my hand. It should buy us time until Eshi returns. Second reason, Yashiro should avoid me as much as possible as I wounded his pride more than his arm. I don't wish to tangle with him while I am conducting my investigation. I still do not like that you put yourself in danger for my sake." An injustice was about to be enacted, Horo-sha told her, and then insisted. "I couldn't stand by and do nothing." She wanted to change the subject. So she asked, "How is Samba?" Nico wanted to scold the young woman some more, but she allowed the course of the conversation to move on and answered, "There has been no change. I wish she would wake up. Samba has a strong spirit," Horo-sha told her. "She will wake, and when she does, Samba can tell us about the groom and who he was and why they were arguing." Horo-sha noticed the tea she had left behind when the town magistrate had barged in, and she walked over to the table and sat, drinking the now cool liquid. "Yoke," Nico scolded her. Please allow me to have hot water brought in, and I will make you fresh tea. This is fine, Horo-sha told her. Tea cold or hot is still tea. You are a woman, Gaka spoke. I can see now. I had thought you were a very short man. Horo-sha chuckled and then said, My sister makes fun of me for being of short stature. She stood, walked over to the house physician, took her hand, and held it for a few moments, and then Horo-sha said, I will begin the investigation as if from the start. How will you do that? Gaka inquired. I will eliminate the cat painting from the equation as if the theft never happened, and once I have done that, I have the murder of Kipa as the focal point. Why was he killed, and was there a reason he was killed first? Gaka stated, the groom only arrived yesterday. A good reason for him to be first, but Samba was also here, Horo-sha stated. Kipa was killed first perhaps because the murderer had discovered he had stolen the staring feline painting. Maybe the killer discovered Kipa would have fled once he sold the painting and had his money. If there had been no Kipa, then there would have been one less victim in the scheme. She thought about it some more, and then Horo-sha said, maybe Kipa's murder was supposed to be the crime that would bring the samurai detective here. Lord Tante might not have passed up a murder investigation. Gaka spoke. You mentioned earlier that a detective was needed in the scheme. It is my working theory. I believe someone wants Nico dead, but in a way that brings shame to the Gaka family as a whole, or maybe just to Eshi. For that to happen, she needs to be convicted of the crimes. I need to dive into this some more and find the heart of the investigation. Ogre Haiku. Terrifying beast. Strike with paralyzing fear. Fierce hungry monster. Chapter 7. Ogre of Reprisal and Retribution. The Red Clover Residence. A housemaid brought in a new teapot full of hot water filled with brewing tea leaves. Horo-sha smelled the scent of the familiar and yet soothing black tea. She had insisted she could drink the cold tea, but Horo-sha was glad for the hot brew. Gaka left while the Ronin was there to go check on the guards. He was also going to appoint another as second in command. They would see to the guards while Gaka guarded the mistress of the manor. The two guards that remained were both outside. Horo-sha waited a few minutes at the table in silence, allowing Nico to rest or at least sit quietly. The Ogre of Reprisal and Retribution had not been slowed, so Horo-sha began the case anew. She would come at the new case with different eyes. What did our three victims have in common? Horo-sha questioned aloud, glad for any help she might get. Samba and Kipa both worked on the estate for a long time, but the groom just arrived. Samba and Kipa both knew you before you became Lady Gaka, but the groom remains a mystery. She waited to see if Nico would say anything, and when she didn't, Horo-sha stated, I believe I need for you to see the groom and see if you recognize him, but we won't be able to do that until Eshi returns with a stay of execution. Nico finally spoke, and she didn't hide her fears as she said, if my husband is able to convince the governor to issue a stay, Eshi will come through for you. I am confident of this. You did not see the look on his face when the town magistrate accused me of the murders, Nico stated as she relived the horrible moment in her mind. I did see, Horo-sha said. I saw a man shocked to hear such an accusation, and then I saw a man who completely disbelieved them. Eshi loves you, Horo-sha stated. He will quickly return with the stay of execution. I don't believe you, Nico spoke. You are only saying this so that I have some hope to cling to. She started crying again and asked, how do you know without a doubt that I did not kill those men? The clues, Horo-sha began. All the clues point to you, and some of them were placed on the bodies. Why would you leave them? Are you guilty of something and must be punished for a past crime? Nico's face ashened, and Horo-sha considered for a moment that she had been wrong. Could her friend be the murderer? Nico was hiding something. Horo-sha considered everything again and decided she was correct. Someone was framing Nico. I believe in your innocence, and I will not give up until I have proven it, Horo-sha swore, and then she found she had nothing else to say. The two of them sat in silence until the head guard returned. Horo-sha finished a second cup of tea and felt refreshed. She stood and told Nico, until I am able to safely take you to see the groom's body, I should investigate other avenues. Did anyone on the estate ever quarrel with Kipa? Gaka replied, I came across Kipa arguing with the cook about a week before the painting was stolen. I couldn't hear what they were arguing about, but the steward came along and broke it up. I will begin with the cook then. Keep Nico safe, she stated and started out. Horo-sha paused and tried to think of some encouraging words to say to Nico, but when she couldn't come up with any, she left. Life lessons from gossip. Tongues can wag, and stories can float, and sometimes truth is just on the outside of hearsay. Chapter 8. Something tragic happened. The servants' quarters courtyard. Horo-sha was walking to the tiny kitchen when she happened upon the steward, speaking to one of the male servants, and she called out to him, Hakairo? He turned to the Ronin and said, one moment. The steward finished talking to the male servant, and then the servant left. The steward asked, "What can I help you with?" She began, "Gato told me about 2 weeks ago you broke up an argument between the cook and Kipa. Can you tell me what the argument was about?" "I only heard part of it," the steward replied. "I believe Kipa was bringing up something from the past." "What would that be?" "Maybe the cook's younger sister." Komi had a younger sister, who over 16 years back, had a son out of wedlock. The steward began. "I heard it told that back then the cook wanted her sister to come and work for the Gaka family so that she had a place to stay, but Nico would not hear of it. She didn't want any children on the estate besides Sora and Itsuki." "What happened to the cook's sister?" "I heard something tragic happened to her sister," the steward replied. "I heard that her sister had to leave town. She and her infant son were never heard from again." "The cook must be very upset with Nico," Horo-sha stated and then started to question out loud. Would she be angry enough to frame Nico for her? I need to speak with the cook myself. I am also in need of a cup of tea. The 2 I had earlier were not enough. Soul of tea. I find that my heart is beating fast. I have to solve this mystery. My mind keeps whirling with what I missed. I need a good cup of tea. Water? Please boil. Chapter 9. A new blend. The tiny kitchen. Komi busied herself in prepping food as Horo-sha guarded over water, waiting on it to boil in a kettle as if it was the last pot of water in all the Kenjin Empire. The steward said that. The cook questioned. "He did," Horo-sha replied, not moving from her post. "And here I thought all of this time Hakairo never gossiped." Horo-sha asked, "What did he get wrong?" The cook explained, "The mistress didn't want my sister working here. That part is true, but she did find her a place with the priestesses in the next town's temple as a cook. She still works there and her son just married." "The way you told it does sound more like Nico. You do keep using the mistress name. Ronin?" The cook spoke with a thick warning in her tone. "We have become friends," Horo-sha explained. "I call her by her first name, and she calls me by my given name." "Your given name? What is your given name, Ronin?" Horo-sha peered at the cook, wondering if she should tell her. She didn't see why she shouldn't, so she replied, Yoke, but that's a... "Oh, I see now. Do you think you are such a clever Ronin hiding who you really are?" "I was not hiding," Horo-sha insisted. The cook interrupted, "Never corrected anyone when they thought you were a man. Does the master know?" "I am not sure," Horo-sha replied. "He has been preoccupied with his missing painting and then the murders." "Are you not going to ask me if I am going to blab about your secret?" "As I said before, I am not hiding anything," Horo-sha told her. "Speak as you wish." The cook grinned, and Horo-sha saw the reason for her name, and Horo-sha said, "You do have a very nice smile." She turned her attention back to the kettle and asked, "Komi, what were you and Kipa arguing about?" The cook questioned, "When did you say this was?" "About 2 weeks ago. It was not really an argument, but our voices were raised. I had told Kipa that a man had approached me while I was at the market, wanting me to work for him. Not as his cook, but as a spy within the Gaka household. I had told him about the incident 3 weeks prior and wanted to know if he had done anything about it. Kipa told me he had been busy and had not talked with the town magistrate. I was a little upset. It was the 5th time I had spoken to him about it. I was going to give him another chance to talk to the town magistrate, and then I was going to do it myself. It sounds like you never brought it up again." "You are correct," the cook replied. A week later, the painting was stolen, and Keeper really did have his hands full. "I still cannot believe he is the one who stole the staring feline. Would you recognize this man if you saw him again?" "I would, though I had a feeling he was working for someone," the cook said. "Why do you say that?" Horo-sha inquired. "His words said he wanted to use me, but he seemed very uninterested in me," Horo-sha said. "I think I understand." The kitchen girl entered, carrying a bag of rice. Horo-sha smiled like a child tempted with a sweet as the water finally started to boil, and she declared, "The water is ready. What special blend of tea do you have for me today?" "I heard that you were an addict," the cook said. "Connoisseur is a better word," Horo-sha suggested. "I will make you a blend that my grandmother would make me. It includes a special mix of things." The kitchen girl stated, "I would have thought the Ronin was in too big of a hurry to solve the murders to have tea." "I function better when I have tea," Horo-sha insisted, not letting anything get in the way of a new tasty blend. The cook took some of the ingredients and added them to the pot to boil instead of infusing in hot water. "Musum, come and watch," Horo-sha urged the older girl as if they were classmates learning a very important skill. "I have already prepared the coconut," the cook began. "I will add it now. You see, the mixture is prepared with black tea and coconut milk along with some secret ingredients." Horo-sha watched mesmerized by the process and eagerly waited for her cup. The cook handed her the tea, and Horo-sha eagerly took a sip. "This is very good," she said as she took a deep breath of the scent. Horo-sha took another sip and then said, "I will take this cup with me. I need to go interview the housekeeper." "Tea haiku?" tea of sweet flavor. I will take it where I go. Tea with coconut. Chapter 10. Sharing time. Outside, the west side of the manor, Horo-sha left the tiny kitchen with her teacup, and Musum followed her out. She thought the kitchen girl would head off in one direction and attend to her duties, but she followed Horo-sha for a while. Musum questioned, "Where is your servant?" "My servant," Horo-sha repeated as she paused and turned to the older girl. "Where is the boy?" The kitchen girl rephrased. "Riko has gone on an errand for me," Horo-sha replied. She noticed that the kitchen girl was carrying a basket as if the cook had sent her on an errand, but Horo-sha believed it was only a prop so no one would question why she was wandering about. Horo-sha asked, "Where are you off to?" "Looking for a nice patch of garden to take a nap in." "Have you been spying on me?" Musum questioned, hiding either a mischievous smirk or a suspicious scowl. Horo-sha decided it was both and laughed, and then she answered the older girl. "No, but for some reason that was the first thing that popped into my brain." She glanced at the kitchen girl and then asked, "Musum, where did you work before coming to the Gaka Estate?" "I worked for the Nakamura family for about 2 years. And before that," the kitchen girl considered the Ronin's question. She never thought anyone would be interested in her past and answered, "I worked for someone very dear to me, someone who raised me as her own even though we were not related by blood. I have someone similar in my life," Horo-sha admitted as she thought of Keikenna, the disgraced priestess. Keikenna, or Ki as she liked to call her, had been her nanny for as long as she could remember, and then after the fire and massacre that took her entire family, Keikenna had become a mother to her. Just thinking about her name brought the warmth and care of the woman, and those things encircled her like a hug. She also thought of the crying samurai and added, "I actually have 2. No, 3 people who watch out for me. I'm including Riko in my growing family." Musum urged the Ronin, who she had figured out was a girl a little younger than herself. "Tell me more about those who love you even though blood does not bind you." Horo-sha started to answer as she had gotten caught up with talking to someone her own age. Growing up, she rarely had any contact with other little girls, and then after the fire, she had even less contact with children as the priestess, and the crying samurai took her into hiding. Musum noticed her hesitation and said, "How about I go first? Hado found me, and she took me in. She taught me the ways of the world and how to survive in it. She taught me what loyalty was, and that sacrifice was part of the love one shows to their family, even a family of people not bound by blood. I wouldn't be here without her. She gave up her old life so she could raise me. It is the same with me," Horo-sha admitted. "The priestess is the only reason I am still here. She saved my life. Several times." "What happened?" "I haven't pieced everything together yet, but I belong to a samurai house," Horo-sha said, and shivers ran up her spine as she thought about her family's name. The priestess told her never to speak the name aloud, fearing those who had killed her family might try to kill her. Horo-sha didn't fear those who kept to the shadows. She had been actively searching for them to take her revenge on them. "Which samurai house?" "I can't tell you that," Horo-sha stated. "Uttering it could endanger those I care about." "You dangled a mystery in front of me," Musum spoke. "I can't resist games or mysteries. Now I'll have to figure it out." Her eyes lit up with the excitement of the challenge, and she said, "Go on. Tell me your story." Horo-sha continued, "I believe one of the lords of one of the other samurai houses became jealous of my father's position and wanted his province for himself. I believe this samurai lord hired ninjas too." "Ninjas?" the kitchen girl exclaimed. "I have heard of these elite assassins, but I have never seen one." "You never want to see one, for most likely. If you do, they will be the last thing you see." "Oh, scary. Go on, tell me more about your family," Musum urged her. "Did you ever track down the ones who murdered them?" Horo-sha replied, "I have tracked down a few who were involved." "Did you strike them down with your katana?" Musum questioned as she mocked holding a sword of her own and cutting someone down with her blade. "No, they are still alive. I did learn from each one and have gotten a step closer to finding the one person responsible." "I would have cut them down," Musum said as she again swung her imaginary sword, slaying the evildoers. Her attention was diverted, and she dropped her invisible sword and pointed ahead of them as she said, "Look, the mistress of the household. It looks like she might have gone and checked on with wife." "With wife?" she questioned the kitchen girl as she turned her attention ahead and saw the housekeeper walking away from the Red Clover residence. "Why do you call her with wife?" Horo-sha inquired as she paused and looked all around. Musum had disappeared. She wondered for a moment if Musum was a ninja, and then she focused on the mission and called out, "Imari, I have some questions for you." The housekeeper was about to enter the Yellow Lotus studio, paused, turned to the Ronin, and said, "What are they?" "Life lessons from tea. Water is clear before the tea brews, and so is matters of the heart until a third party clouds the waters." Chapter 11. Another mystery. Outside the Yellow Lotus studio, Interviewing the cook was actually very enjoyable, considering Horo-sha was investigating murders. She was rewarded with a tasty treat which she was still sipping on. Horo-sha debated the entire time they looked for the housekeeper how to approach her new line of questioning, and she decided just to come right out and ask, "Why do you dislike Nico?" The housekeeper was about to deny it, but then she realized who she was talking to and answered, "It is nothing that the mistress did. I just adored Eshi's first wife and couldn't accept Nico as the mistress of the manor. Is my dislike for her so obvious?" "No, you hide it well," Horo-sha replied. Musum seemed to appear right out of the shadows, and she told the Ronin, "I have to go." Horo-sha nearly screamed as the kitchen girl startled her. A small shriek did escape her lips, and the housekeeper finally caught on to what others had already guessed. Musum noticed the fright she gave the Ronin, and she was very pleased with herself, and amused. She would have made fun of Horo-sha if the housekeeper had not been there. Musum said, "I have vegetables to dig up?" Horo-sha nodded as she laughed. Perhaps Musum was a ninja, a kitty cat ninja, and perhaps she was teasing her. A friend her own age. She had never had a friend her own age before. The kitchen girl left as Horo-sha considered what the housekeeper had told her. "I believe you have lied to me in a tiny way," Horo-sha accused. "Your dislike is not so much feelings of mild hatred toward Nico, but they are manifestations of your sorrow in losing a friend. You and Eshi's wife must have been very close." "We were," the housekeeper stated. "I still miss her. Maybe it is time you no longer associate Nico with the death of Eshi's first wife." "Maybe it is time." "I do not think I can do that," the housekeeper interrupted. "I do not believe." Horo-sha heard the pain in the housekeeper's voice and urged her. "You do not believe what?" "I do not believe Eshi's first wife's death was an accident. I believe foul play was involved." Horo-sha considered what she had learned about Eshi and Nico's first meeting and inquired, before his first wife's death, did Eshi ever leave the estate and was gone for more than a day? If the master went to town, which was rare, he was only there an hour or two at the most. 2 hours would not be long enough to go to one of the neighboring towns. Horo-sha spoke mostly to herself and then asked, "Do you know of anyone who came to the estate who did not have business with the master?" The housekeeper thought about it, and then she answered, "Not before Eshi's first wife died. A few days after her death, a woman with a parasol, who called herself Lady Bodden, would come calling. She was from the next town and visited Eshi all the way up to a week before he brought Nico home. For about a month, the woman spent time alone with Eshi without a lady's maid or any sort of female servant. She was not concerned in the least about her reputation. As the months went by, Eshi seemed to lose interest in her, but she still came around. I knew the master missed his first wife and was seeking comfort, but..." "Go on," Horo-sha urged her. "I believe the lady was from a brothel." "You saw this lady?" "I did," the housekeeper answered. "I saw her several times." "Have you seen her since Nico became the mistress of the manor?" "I have not, but I believe I would recognize her today." "Thank you for your time." Horo-sha spoke and then questioned, "Would you know where the steward is?" Soul of Tea. I am starting to see the painting. More strokes have been added to the paper. What image will manifest? Tea of Curiosity has the better of me. Chapter 12. The mystery deepens. The South Courtyard. The scent of hay and manure permeated the air as Horo-sha approached the stable. She found the steward and one of the male servants within mucking out the stalls. The horse with the white mane neighed at her as she entered. "I have a few questions for you, and since I am racing the sun." "I will be blunt," Horo-sha began and asked, "Why do you dislike Nico?" The steward glanced at the male servant and then said to the Ronin, "Why don't we talk as we walk to your residence?" "Lead the way," she said. They walked through the gate beside the stable and entered the private path. "I will ask again," Horo-sha started as the steward had remained quiet. "No need," he said. "I will answer your question. I have worked on this estate for a long time. I had taken on the position of steward the last year Eshi's grandfather was master of the manor." "Was Eshi's grandfather also the Gaka family head?" "Nashiro was," the steward replied. "The position usually falls to the oldest son." "You said usually." Eshi's father was the second oldest son, and he took over both the position of master of the manor and the Gaka family head. "I don't know why Mashiro didn't pass on the title to his eldest son." "Please go on with telling me why you dislike Nico," she urged him. The steward replied, "Eshi's father was still alive when Eshi's first wife died, and Eshi, well, sought the companionship of other women. Under his father's orders, I followed Eshi when he started traveling to the other town. I saw the woman Eshi repeatedly visited, and I recognized her as the one he brought home as his wife. You knew Nico's previous occupation since she became the mistress of the manor. Did you tell Eshi's father?" "It was my job to," he replied. "If the mistress' past ever came to light, it would destroy the Gaka family's reputation. So I resented Eshi for bringing her here. She repeated her question. Did you ever tell Eshi's father? I did not. I could tell Eshi loved Nico very much. If his father had known, I do not know what he would have done to Nico. I could also tell that Nico loved Eshi and his sons. I think I understand, Horo-sha spoke. You disliked Nico because you lied to Eshi's father. Your dislike for her stems from your own guilt of omission. The steward said nothing to her observation, so she asked, do you know of anyone else who knows of Nico's secret? I would imagine anyone she worked with at the brothel, but I don't believe anyone else on the estate knows. Horo-sha asked, gauging his awareness, did anyone from the brothel come to work on the estate? Not that I am aware of, the steward replied. If they did, they hid the fact from me. Did you notice anything odd during the time after Eshi's first wife died up until the point he brought Nico back as the new mistress of the manor? No, I had not. Wait. The steward spoke and then paused. I do remember one evening. I believe it was about a week after Nico arrived. The sun had yet to set and there was this woman. I should back up a bit. I had exited the south gate to receive a package I ordered from a merchant. I spoke to the merchant briefly for he wanted to leave before it started to rain. I was about to go back through the gate when I noticed this woman in a white kimono standing across the road. A noromono was there resting on the ground, and the two men who carried the litter were also at rest. The woman was staring at the estate as if she had lost something. I was about to say something to her, but it started to rain. The woman opened a red wagasa as it poured. I paused under the cover of the gate and turned back. She stared a little longer at the estate, and then she turned and entered the noromono. I never knew who she was or why she had been standing across from the estate. Would you recognize this woman if you saw her again? I do not know, the steward replied. I did not get that good of a look at her. Is there anything else you think I should know about that time back then that might? Horo-sha began, trying to choose the best words. ... make Nico the target of someone's hatred. He thought about it and then answered, I heard Eshi gave Nico the money she needed to pay her debt from the madam of the brothel. Why did you mention this? I also heard that madam of the brothel was greatly upset with Nico over something. I was a little worried this madam would come after Nico and cause a ruckus, so I looked into it as much as I could. The madam was partly upset because she did not know that Nico had paid off her debt. Nico gave the money to the madam's partner, who was some sort of thug. The way I heard it told, the madam went into a fit of rage and nearly killed one of her own girls. Thank you, this information helps, Horo-sha told him and then noticed they had arrived at the Red Lotus residence. The steward continued on his way as she entered the residence. Hot spring haiku. Do not tempt me bath. Soothing hot mineral soak. Hold your liquid call. Chapter 13. Indulging only one vice. The Red Lotus residence. The hot spring tempted her, but Horo-sha would only allow herself to indulge in one of her vices. She could take a bath once she safeguarded Nico's life. She turned to Riko to speak to the boy, and then Horo-sha remembered she had sent him away for his safety and on an important errand. She had no one to talk to and bounce her ideas off of. Horo-sha was a little worried for him going alone on such a journey, but Riko was probably safer than being on the estate. She considered what new things she had learned. Something was going on, and it had been going on for a while. A man had approached the cook. A lady with a parasol, who cared not about her reputation, frequented Eshi's residence after his first wife's death. There was the Vex Madam, and a woman who stood in the rain with a red wagasa. Were any of these people or events connected? She walked around the residence too restless to stand still. Could one of these four people have hated Nico enough to frame her? Horo-sha considered them some more along with the details she had heard about them. She might have been wrong. There might not be four people but three. A wagasa was an oil paper umbrella. Could Lady Botan and the woman in the white kimono be the same person? Maybe Lady Botan had intentions for Eshi. Maybe she discovered that her lover married a woman and brought her home as the mistress of the manor. Lady Botan could have stood outside the estate in the rain, mourning her loss, or she could have been standing outside the estate plotting her revenge. Horo-sha sighed. There were too many unknowns. She needed to continue her investigation. Horo-sha longingly looked at the hot springs once more and then headed for her next destination. Life lessons from tea. Tea is like an army, a battle cry, a call to arms, a need for reinforcements. Chapter 14. Reinforcements. The Peacock Garden. There you are, the kitchen girl yelled. Horo-sha pulled from her thoughts as she entered the garden from the south courtyard and said, Musum. I brought you some of Komi's tea since you seem to like it. Horo-sha immediately perked up and said, Thank you. I needed the reinforcements. She took the coconut milk-flavored tea and started to sip on it. I also need to quiet my mind and think of something other than the case. I need a short break to find the path I must walk in this investigation. If I can do this, if I can find a stillness of the mind, something that has been eluding me might approach me. Horo-sha found shade under the lone cherry tree in the center of the garden and sat, sipping on the tea. She watched a male peacock fan out his tail feathers to impress a female. The birds were so beautiful. The kitchen girl sat beside her and picked up a stick, drawing in the dirt. "You were telling me about the ones who massacred your family," Musum stated, breaking up the silence the Ronin wanted to sit in. She wasn't sure if she should tell the kitchen girl, but Horo-sha opened up and said, "I didn't go into details before, but someone killed my father. I watched my older brother die right before me as he tried to save us. And I nearly died when our castle estate burned to the ground." Musum's gaze was distant as she murmured, "I too had a harsh life and a harsh beginning." She thought about asking the kitchen girl about it, but Musum spoke before she had a chance. "You told me you had tracked down a few who were responsible. What about the others?" "I am no longer looking for them," Horo-sha admitted. "Why not?" Musum asked. "I found my sister. She is still alive. I have no need to take my revenge anymore. It is more important to me to live for my family and not die in taking my revenge. Haven't you worked your entire life in the pursuit of your revenge? How can you drop it so easily?" "I thought I had been. I thought revenge was my only purpose, but then I realized my gifts and blessing can be used to help people. I enjoy the work I do as the Ronin detective." Horo-sha paused and looked at the kitchen girl's doodle and said, "That's a red crown crane. You have one on your sword," Musum spoke. "It is quite good," Horo-sha said. "I have no knack for drawing or writing." Musum looked up and spotted the steward entering the garden and erased the drawing with her hand. She stood as she said, "Better not let the master of the household catch me loafing around." "No, you better not," Horo-sha agreed as she also stood. "He would not be as kind as Komi." Musum started off, paused, and stated, "People have been talking and most of them are saying that Lady Evening Vanilla murdered the thief, and 80. 80? Horo-sha repeated. "In its context, 80 refers to the groom, but why do you call him 80? He was paid well as a groom." 80 zinc a day, Musum replied and then asked as she wanted to get back on her topic and not stray. "Why do you fight so hard for Lady Evening Vanilla? Why do you go at this investigation with such blind zeal?" Horo-sha wanted to ask her what she meant by blind zeal, but then she guessed anyone who had heard the evidence against Nico would think she was guilty. Horo-sha decided to joke about her statement instead and answered, "And here I thought I was spending most of my time indulging in my number one vice." "No, you might want others to think you are more busy with drinking tea, but I see you, Horo-sha, or Horo as the boy likes to call you. I see your mind is working the puzzle. I see that you are working pieces here and there, seeing where they fit. So tell me, why do you fight for Lady Evening Vanilla?" I see a painting someone is creating. The picture is taking form, but there are many more strokes that must be brushed. I see this painting, and I also see another painting, a painting of misleads and subterfuge." Horo-sha closed her eyes as she continued. "The second painting's picture is nearly complete, and it casts a dark shadow on Nico. If I can see the finished work of the first painting before the second painting is completed, I will have this case solved. I will know who is trying to frame the mistress of the manor and why." "I take it back," Musum spoke, impressed by the one she had made fun of. "I think it is better that you are here instead of the samurai detective. The old lord has nothing on you. We will see. I do thank you. Your distraction, though not quiet, has allowed me to find the path. I need to hurry down it. Nico doesn't have much time. Soul of tea. I needed to quiet my mind. I needed to let go of worry and distress just for a few minutes. I found conversation, and it was distracting as hot tea on a cold day. Beet red haiku? A question or two. Hot flash of understanding. Redder than a beet." Chapter 15. No niceties. The Peacock Garden. The kitchen girl talked with Horo-sha a little while longer, and then Musum went about her work, or at least the semblance of working. Horo-sha considered again all she had learned and decided it was time to speak to Nico again. "The Red Clover residence. How is Samba?" Horo-sha inquired as she entered. Gato replied, "There is no change." She noticed that Nico had retaken her place sitting next to the house physician. She looked very worried and exhausted. Horo-sha felt helpless to help. All she could do was solve the case. She had to solve the case. "Nico, we need to speak," Horo-sha said, and then turned to Gato. And he and the other two guards went outside without a word from her. She waited a few moments and then began. "Nico, I need to ask you about your time before you became Eshi's wife. Tell me about the place you worked, your fellow employees, and your employer. You can say them. The words. It is fine. You can say brothel, my fellow prostitutes, and the madam." Horo-sha peered at her for a few seconds, and then she said, "I have been told that my bluntness can come across as callous. I didn't mean to seem thoughtless, insensitive." Horo-sha nodded. She turned to the young woman and said, "Yoke, I did not think that you meant them that way. I am just tired and very worried for Samba. I have been told if she does not wake in the next few days, she could. I am sorry. I know what she means to you. She is your best friend, Horo-sha spoke. But time is an enemy to us. I must push forward in my investigation, and I can't adhere to niceties. I have to discover the mastermind behind. Mastermind? Nico inquired. I spoke of this person before, Horo-sha began. Kipa's horrible death, Samba's attempted drowning, the groom's brutal murder. I believe they were all orchestrated so that you would be blamed for them. I remember, Nico spoke. I have just been distracted. You do look tired, Horo-sha said. You should go sleep once we are done speaking. She paused and then went straightway into what she had been saying. The amount of work that had to go into this scheme. I don't believe one person carried it out, and because of this fact, there has to be a mastermind. Nico, someone hates you so much that they killed 2 men and tried to kill your friend. I have asked myself, why not just kill you? The answer, I believe, is that they want you to suffer even more than the 3 victims suffered. Can you think of anyone from your past who would hate you that much? Nico thought about it, and then she said, the woman who ran the brothel. She neither liked me nor disliked me, and Madame treated me as she treated all of her girls. My father owed a great gambling debt, and I was sold to the brothel to pay off my father's debt. Madame was partners with the man who ran the town gambling house. I had only worked there for about 6 months when Eshi started to come. He fell in love with me and purchased exclusive rights, taking them away from another man, who was obsessed with me. What do you mean by exclusive rights? Horo-sha inquired innocently. They are. How should I put them? I cannot be with another man, so I was only Eshi's. Horo-sha's face turned beet red as all she could say was, oh, Nico continued to explain, trying not to laugh at how easily the young woman was embarrassed. The man tried to counter and outbid Eshi, but Eshi's wealth was greater than his. She thought back to those times and admitted, it wasn't as bad. While in exclusive rights, I only worked for the one man, but when Eshi acquired them, it was not a job, it was as if we were a couple. She sighed, thinking how in love they had been back then, and then continued. It was a short time after Eshi started coming that Madame's attitude toward me changed. She became verbally abusive. She even hit me on one occasion, and because of this, I did not tell her that Eshi was going to pay my debt. Eshi strictly worked with the man who ran the gambling house. I snuck out of the brothel in the middle of the night once my debt was paid and never saw Madame again. I never understood why she hated me. Horo-sha inquired. What was Madame's name? Her name? I don't know. I only ever heard her referred to as Madame. I heard that Kipa worked at the brothel as a bouncer. He did, Nico confirmed. Can you think of anyone else? Any merchant or family member who has a grudge against you? Uncle Tadao never liked me. I thought for a while that he knew about my origins. If he does, he has not said anything to me or Eshi. Go rest, Nico. You look like you are going to collapse. Gato will watch over Samba. She started to protest. I shouldn't. What would Samba say to you right now if she was able to? Nico looked at her friend and said, she would scold me and force me to sleep. Go sleep then, or I will tell her when she wakes how you have treated yourself, Horo-sha threatened. Nico would have argued some more, but she was too tired to. She went to one of the guest rooms. Horo-sha moved over to the house physician, sat beside her, took her hand, leaned to her ear, and said, Samba, you have to wake. Nico needs you. She paused and then added, ... and I need to know what you know. Life lessons from an ogre. Ogres are always hungry, and so should our drives be, either in hunting down the truth or bringing evildoers to justice. Chapter 16. Carp Streamer and Coins. The Vault Garden. Horo-sha had wanted to stay by the house physician's side a little longer, but she felt the ogre breathing down her neck. She had left and headed for the place the first murder was committed. The whole Kipa had been buried alive and had not been filled in. Horo-sha stared into it, and slowly her mind was pulled into the dirt and roots. The carp-shaped streamer earring was swimming through the dirt and around the 3 silver coins. Kipa had buried some sort of secret, a crime perhaps, and he was paid well to do so and tell no one. The groom might have known the secret crime and was killed to silence him, or the image of the 8 copper dropped into the watery dirt world, sinking past the carp streamer. The coin sunk past the 3 silver coins and rested at the bottom as if it was a foundation. Horo-sha's mind drew her deeper into this world of thought and speculation until an outside force pulled her from her mind churns. You, Ronin, Komi wants to see you, the kitchen girl called and startled her. Horo-sha let out a squeal. She had been so deep in thought that she didn't hear Musum approach. She said, You scared me. You scared me again. The kitchen girl laughed as she peered into the hole and said, I could have done worse. For a Ronin, your guard was down. Where were you? Swimming with Kipa, Horo-sha replied. Ha, I was trying to get into the mind of the killer, not in a way that I become the killer, but in a way that I can see his or her reasoning or justifications. What did you see? Musum questioned. I saw a koi swimming in the dirt, gasping for air. Horo-sha answered as she once again envisioned the carp-shaped streamer. Fish do not breathe air. Most fish do not. So is the koi a fish? Horo-sha questioned, mostly herself. Maybe the koi is a different type of creature, Musum commented. Sometimes you don't make sense, but I think that is why I like you. Your mind. It must see strange and wonderful things. She focused on the kitchen girl and inquired, What about you, Musum? Do you see strange and wonderful things? Me. I guess you could say that. Strange and... Oh, I almost forgot why I am here. The cook wants to see you. About what? Horo-sha questioned. She heard that you have not eaten all day, and she wants me to scold you and insist that you come and eat something. She has prepared several dishes that she swears will fuel your big brain and tiny body. Funny coming from someone who is also small, Horo-sha grumbled. She also said if that doesn't convince you, she has a new tea for you to TR. Lead on, Horo-sha spoke before she could finish. I am famished, and it has been too long since tea has passed my lips. You must really pee a lot drinking so much tea, Musum commented. There is that, Horo-sha replied with a chuckle. But sacrifices must be made in the pursuit of my passion. Soul of tea. I don't mind the cost of drinking my favorite beverage. I don't really think about the cost that much. I'm too focused on tea. Chapter 17. Another name for the Ronin. The vault courtyard. The young women walked for a few minutes, leaving the garden. Horo-sha again entered her thoughts, but she didn't stay in them that long as the kitchen girl pulled her right out. What is your name? Musum asked. You go by Wanderer, but surely you have. You can call me Horo. Horo. Nope, that is not your real name either, Musum said. It is only what the boy calls you. Tell me your real name, or is it a secret? You can tell me. I haven't told anyone you are really a girl. Horo-sha grinned and then asked, How long have you known? I knew you had some sort of secret. I just couldn't figure it out at first. I have known for a while now. My name is Yoke. I would never have guessed that was your name, the kitchen girl said. Who else knows? Nico, Samba, Komi, and Riko. The housekeeper and Eshi might know, but I'm not sure. Besides the boy, are the rest of them okay with you being a girl? I believe so, Horo-sha answered. Nico even asked if it was fine to call me Yoke when it is just us girls. Cockeye, Musum muttered as if a scowl had forced out the word. What was that? Horo-sha questioned. Nothing, the kitchen girl replied. She peered at the Ronin as if scrutinizing her. And then Musum said, Yoke might be your name, but it is not you. It isn't? Horo-sha questioned as she imagined her mom naming her the day she was born. No, you are Kaiwi, Musum dubbed her. She grinned mischievously and then added, It means marvel and miracle. Horo-sha smiled and then said, You really like giving others different names. Has anyone ever given you a different name? A frown immediately smeared Musum's face as if she had said something horrible to the kitchen girl. Musum had stopped in her tracks, and Horo-sha also paused and turned to her. She had never seen this bleak sadness engulf the kitchen girl, and her mind raced for words to erase what she had suggested. My real mother did give me a name, Musum finally spoke, but Hado named me. She insisted as if she had to eliminate some ill-gotten curse. The name I have now is my name. Horo-sha wasn't sure what to say, so she searched for the right words. The right words took flight like an eagle and soared far from her lips. She reached out to grasp the fleeing eagle. Musum was angry as she stared at the Ronin. She noticed Horo was giving her this confused and yet compassionate look. The Ronin looked like she would say something, but the kitchen girl spoke before she could. Kaiwi, we should hurry, Musum stated to change the subject as she walked past Horo and continued toward their destination. We should not keep Komi waiting. Horo-sha watched as the kitchen girl walked on. Musum had been hurt in the past, and yet she found a way to live life. Musum was just like her. She had found a way to live life and put things like revenge and hatred behind her. Horo-sha started after her when a thought crossed her mind. She muttered, Doesn't Kaiwi also mean menace and threat? Horo-sha called after the older girl as she hurried after her. Musum, doesn't Kaiwi also mean menace and threat? Can't see me haiku. Invisible me. No one can see me fixed there. I am not Harin. Chapter 18. Heated words. The manor. Musum entered through the back and had started to remove her shoes when Horo-sha entered. The Ronin was out of breath as she had run to catch up. Musum, doesn't Kaiwi mean? The kitchen girl lifted her finger to her own lips, and Horo-sha immediately became quiet. Someone is arguing, Musum whispered. Horo-sha quickly removed her sandals at the back door's jenkin, and then quietly hurried to where the raised voices were coming from. She peeked around the corner into the main hall and spotted Sora arguing with Uncle Tadao. Sora looked very upset and his great-uncle equally upset. Can you hear what Uncle Tadao and the gifted weasel are arguing about? Musum whispered. Horo-sha glanced at her, thinking about the name the kitchen girl had given Sora, and then answered, No, but I did hear the word painting, and they are standing outside the painting room. One of the housemaids entered through the front, so Uncle Tadao moved their conversation into the painting room. Horo-sha and Musum quickly walked to the entrance to the room and past the housemaid. They acted like they were going outside as if they had planned it without any words between them, and then when the housemaid went around the corner, they listened in at the painting room. I can't hear anything, Musum said. They are whispering. I do not think we will hear anything else. We should continue to the tiny kitchen. They were going to the walkway entrance for the tiny kitchen, so they started back the way they came. Musum asked, What do you think they were arguing about? The paintings, Horo-sha replied. Are you talking about the missing painting? No, I am talking about the replaced paintings, Musum stated. I don't know anything about them. And I thought only 3 people knew about them, Horo-sha stated. Maybe Sora had a partner, or maybe Sora was only being used. Does this have anything to do with the murders? Musum asked. Not the most recent murders, Horo-sha replied. But I am starting to see a pattern for an old murder. Life lessons from tea. Blind tea tasting is like a question. You never know what answer you'll get. Chapter 19. A new assistant. The tiny kitchen. They went outside to the covered wooden walkway that ran the length of the manor's west side and entered through the side entrance. Komi was busy about her work but did look up to see who entered. The cook set out 3 bowls of udon noodles, and Horo-sha gladly ate with them. They were halfway through their meal when the Ronin started her questions. The town magistrate believes Nico is a murderess. What do you 2 think? I have known the mistress for a long time, the cook began. I can't imagine her doing such horrible things, Musum answered. I have not had that much contact with Lady Evening Vanilla, but if I was to use my imagination, I would believe that someone like her would not do the murders herself. She would hire someone to kill the others. She would not get her hands dirty. Hire someone. I had not thought of that, Horo-sha stated, and then asked, Do you have any other ideas about this case? I've been thinking about the painting that was stolen, the one they call the staring feline. Musum began. I have heard that Kippa drugged one of his own guards and removed the door to the vault from its hinges so he wouldn't have to mess with the lock. Kippa then stole the painting, but no one has been able to find it. Not in his room. I heard Eshi had a few guards go through his room, and they found nothing. Do you believe you know where it is? Horo-sha questioned, wondering if the older girl had also solved the mystery of the staring feline's location. If I was Kippa, I would hide it in plain sight. Go on. She spoke, eagerly waiting to hear her hypothesis. Where do you think he hid it? In the vault, Musum replied. It would be a perfect place to hide it. Horo-sha was very pleased to hear her guess. She had already surmised that Kippa had hidden the staring feline in the vault. He had done so by removing it from its bamboo frame and rolling it up and placing it in one of the scrolls that was already stored within the scroll shelf. The piece of lacquered bamboo led her to that conclusion, along with one of the scrolls within the scroll shelf was twice as thick as the others. Musum seemed to have a raw talent for seeing things as Riko did. Musum, would you like to help me? Help you with what? The kitchen girl asked. This case, Horo-sha replied. As she granted me permission to have 2 of his household assist me, and Gato is already assisting me. Do you want me to help you? I do, Horo-sha replied. I might have mentioned it before. I will start my investigation with Kippa since he appears to be the first stroke in this painting. Painting? Musum repeated and asked, Are you talking about the stolen painting? No, I am talking about a painting that only I can see. Do you mean like you were talking about in the Peacock Garden? Yes, I believe someone is painting a picture, or at least I thought so. The culprit might have just been trying to frame a murder on Nico. Nico, are you calling the mistress by her first name? I am? I believe we have become friends. I want to become friends with you, Musum admitted. I believe that is too late. The kitchen girl became upset as she questioned. Why do you say that? We are already friends, Horo-sha told her. So what about it? Will you help me? I don't know. I already have a lot of work with the cook, Musum said as she glanced at Komi. Can I think about it? Yes, Horo-sha replied, a little disappointed she didn't pounce on the opportunity. Let me know if you decide you want to help. Soul of surprise. I am shocked. What I thought. The reason why I. None of it is true. Chapter 20. It's all about the cat painting. Red Clover Residence. Gato nodded to Horo-sha as she passed him outside. And then she entered. Nico was back sitting next to her friend. Horo-sha had hoped she would still be resting, but she said nothing about it, knowing Nico would be too worried about her friend if she didn't watch over her. Horo-sha walked over to the mistress and was about to talk when Gato came in. The master is back, he declared, and he has the governor with him. As she entered, followed by Manzo, the governor of Kiramatsu, and the governor's 2 guards. Nico immediately stood and uttered in relief, "Eshi." He glanced at his wife and turned away from her as if ashamed of her and faced the Ronin, and he told Horo-sha, "I brought the governor. Now give me my painting." She had been mistaken. When Horo-sha sent Eshi to acquire a stay of execution, she thought he had done so to save his wife. She had been discouragingly mistaken. The only thing he wanted to save was face and the painting that meant more to him than his entire family. Horo-sha turned to Nico, who peered at her husband in confusion. Horo-sha became enraged. She wanted to scream at Eshi, but she held her wrath-filled tongue. Horo-sha calmed herself enough to speak and turned back to Eshi as anger filled all of her being. Horo-sha spoke 2 words, fearing if she said any more she would let her emotions rule her. "Follow me." The Ronin walked past the master and left, and Eshi felt the oscillating rage that had been aimed at him. He glanced at his wife once more and then without a word, followed after Horo-sha. The governor and his 2 guards followed after them. Rage haiku. I am so angry. If my wraith-filled eyes could kill, he would be dead. Chapter 21. The prize above all other prizes. The vault room. Horo-sha kept her anger in check the whole way to the vault building. Her pace was angry and quick, and she arrived before the others and paced the vault room, making the guard on duty a little nervous watching an irate Ronin fume about like a flaming phoenix. Eshi, the governor, and the governor's 2 guards entered a short time later. She wanted to yell at him, but instead, she instructed him, "Open the vault." Eshi wondered if the Ronin would strike him down the moment she handed him the painting. He glanced at his own guard in the vault room and at the 2 governor's guards. The Ronin might try to slay him, but would probably not do so with the 3 guards there. Probably. Eshi removed his key, unlocked the green fish padlock, and opened the door. The Ronin went in, and the 4 men followed. She went directly over to the scroll shelf, found the scroll that was twice the size of the others, and unrolled it. The staring feline was within. "Here," she said as she angrily held it out to the master. Eshi looked at it as if it meant everything to him. But he did not take it. He asked, "How did it come to be here?" Keeper removed the painting from its frame, rolled it up, and stuck it in this onion skin paper, hoping since the painting was also on onion skin, no one would notice. The merchant, who purchased the onion skin paper from you, paid Keeper to steal the staring feline. Keeper knew that once the merchant came for his order, you would have him assist the steward in removing the paper, and he could make sure the hidden painting was not discovered and was handed over to the merchant. Keeper was smarter than I thought, Eshi said. Well, she questioned as she jiggled the painting at him. Horo-sha thought of ripping it in half, but she let that thought flutter away. Take the painting. It was the bargain. Bring the governor or a stay of execution and I would produce the painting. It is magnificent, isn't it? Eshi said as he peered at the work of art he had cherished since he was a boy. Yes, it is the only thing that matters, she replied, letting her anger slip out in bits of glass and bone-like fragments that cut at him a little at a time. You now have your prize that is above all other prizes. Take it. It is magnificent, but as a payment, it is far less worth the prize I purchased with it. Purchased? Horo-sha repeated. Eshi turned to the governor and nodded to him. Governor Manzo stepped forward and took the painting from the Ronin. 1 week, the governor said. I can grant the Ronin detective 1 week to exonerate Gaka Nico with this and the other payment. Horo-sha could have cried as she said, I thought the painting was more important to you than your wife. I thought you brought the governor here only so that I would give you staring feline. It was half the cost, Eshi explained. First, I wanted to ensure that you did know where the painting was before I agreed to the governor's terms. Nico cannot be executed for a week. He paused and then stated as if confessing his heart, I once told you that I had to do something to alleviate myself of the distraction that Nico had become. I left our bedroom. I left my wife's side. I will not do that again. You said half the cost. He glanced at the governor, and then as she told her, the staring feline bought Nico 3 days. I must finish a painting of my own and give it to Governor Manzo within 3 days. If I can do that, we will gain an additional 4 days. Horo-sha turned to the governor and said, Your price is a little steep. We went and saw the town magistrate first, Governor Manzo started. I looked over the evidence he has gathered and agree with his judgment. I was good friends with Eshi's grandfather and extended the courtesy. Courtesy? Horo-sha snapped. I see it as robbery, but I still thank you for giving me the time. She turned to the master of the manor and said, I believe my need for your help is not over. There may come a time when I will need you to protect your wife when I am unable to. Is there anything I can do now? Eshi inquired. She answered, No. Eshi bent down to his knees and put his forehead to the ground in front of the Ronin as he begged her, Save my wife. Prove her innocence. She is the prize that is above all other prizes. You have to save her life. I will do my part in paint, for I cannot save my wife any other way. You must discover who is behind this scheme. I will, Horo-sha vowed. You sacrifice the staring feline. I will prove Nico's innocence even if I must sacrifice all that I have. She started for the exit and added, quickly, go to your wife. Tell her what you did for her so that she doesn't sink into despair, and then tell her I will not stop. I will not stop until I have found the mastermind. Life lessons from the weasel. Weasels are cunning and clever. Avoid snares and you will make out like a bandit. Chapter 22. The eldest son. The painting room. I thought I might still find you here, Horo-sha said to the eldest son as she walked in. Sora had been in deep thought and had not heard the Ronin enter. He asked, why are you looking for me? I heard father is back. Did you tell him what I did? Is that why you were arguing with your uncle? She asked as she looked around to make sure they were alone. Did you tell him that I learned of your secret? Uncle Tadao was not yelling at me because you learned of my secret. Sora replied. I don't think he knows. Why were the two of you arguing? He glanced at her and then turned his attention back to a painting of a weasel he had been staring at. When he never answered her, Horo-sha asked, do you know what the town magistrate intends to do to your mother? He started to argue the point of the maternal relationship he had with his father's wife, but then instead, Sora said, I do. Do you hate Nico so much you would let her die? She killed Kipa and the groom. Do you honestly believe that? He thought about it and replied, no. She asked, do you want Nico to die? Horo-sha waited a few moments, and when he didn't answer, she said, remain silent and she will. Tell me why you were arguing with your uncle and I might be able to save her. I did not come up with the plan to forge the paintings and sell the real ones off on my own. Uncle Tadao convinced me to do so. He said I could become wealthy and I have, but I have squandered that wealth and betrayed my family. I do not deserve to be the next Gaka family head. What did you say? I do not deserve to be the next Gaka family head. If you don't become the next head, does it fall to Itsuki? Sora replied, normally it would, but if it ever got out how I was disgraced, the line of succession would bump to the next branch in the family. Would Uncle Tadao be that next branch? He would, Sora answered. Do you believe that he gave me the idea so that I would be disgraced? Uncle Tadao would also be implicated. Would he? Horo-sha questioned. Did he ever steal any of the paintings, or forge one, or sell one? No, but he gave me the idea. She questioned, did he do so in the form of a suggestion? I guess you could say he did. It would be hard to implicate him for that. You should be wary of Uncle Tadao. He might be after your head as someone else is after Nico's. Sora asked, what should I do? I don't know, but until I can solve the old and new mysteries, you should stick close to your brother. Uncle Tadao would be less inclined to get rid of both of Eshi's sons. Safety in numbers and all. Horo-sha peered at the weasel he was staring at and asked, is this one of your paintings? He nodded. It is very good. You have taught yourself very well, she spoke. And your brother is right. You would make for a good instructor. Sora wasn't sure what the Ronin was talking about. He started to ask him but then thought of something else, and inquired instead, what old mystery are you talking about? She thought about whether or not to tell him, and then Horo-sha decided he should know. So she answered, the mystery of who killed your birth mother. Soul of tea. I am so very thankful. So very thankful. As thankful as I am when I have tea. Chapter 23. Wait no more. The Red Clover residence. She's awake, Horo-sha exclaimed as she entered the house physician's residence and found Samba sitting up in bed taking a little water. Gato was also in the room. She woke up about 10 minutes ago, Nico stated. Horo-sha moved over to their side and asked the mistress, did Eshi come and visit you? He did, and he told me everything, even how he feared for my life. I wanted him to stay by my side, but he explained that he must finish a painting. He is in the Yellow Lotus studio. What is so funny? Horo-sha inquired. Eshi told me you were so mad when you thought, as I had thought, Eshi was only worried about the staring feline. He was afraid that you would strike him down before he was able to tell you the deal he had made with the governor. I was very angry, Horo-sha admitted. You should watch that temper of yours, Nico told her. I watch it very carefully, but I do slip on occasion, Horo-sha stated, and then she bumped shoulders with the older woman and said, see, I told you, Eshi loves you more than anything. I know, Nico spoke as she blushed, thinking about her conversation with her husband. Samba looked ill as she stated, as nice as it might be to talk about romance, will you two not talk about it around me? Horo-sha glanced at Nico and then told the house physician, you had us all scared that you wouldn't wake. Samba looked at the mistress and said, all of you should not have worried. It takes more than some maniac to kill me. I wish there was time to let you rest since your ordeal, but I must question you, Horo-sha said. And then she asked, what do you remember about the person who was trying to drown you? I never saw them, Samba answered. Not even in the water's reflection? Horo-sha inquired. Samba shook her head and then added, I don't remember much about the drowning. Nico told me I had been drowned, but I don't remember anything past the conversation you were having with the mistress about the note the housekeeper had sent. I can remember you leaving, but nothing after that. Maybe your mind only needs more rest, and then you will remember more of what led you into the koi garden. Horo-sha spoke. Nico told me you were heading to the tiny kitchen to get a bite to eat. Samba looked at the Ronin blankly as she couldn't remember. Horo-sha turned to the head guard and said, Gato, has the town magistrate or his deputy tried to enter the residence? No one has come to the residence, the head guard reported. Good, then the next thing I need to do is… Gato, one of the guards outside the residence called as he entered and stood at the entrance. What is it? He questioned. The housekeeper is here. She says that Lady Rai wishes to greet the mistress. She and her lady's maid is waiting just outside. Nico turned to the Ronin and questioned, why would she be here? Her husband hates me. I don't know, Horo-sha replied. Maybe the housekeeper knows. Let the aroma that precedes the tea speak for it. Tea haiku? Tea in my teacup. Smile. Tea gone from my teacup. Big frown on my face. Chapter 24. A visit from an unexpected guest. The Red Clover residence. Nico peered at Yo curiously as she had no idea what the young woman was talking about when she mentioned the tea and aroma. She was about to ask her when the house physician spoke up. I think you should send Lady Rai away, Samba suggested. I am ill. Use my illness to your advantage. We should know why she is here, Horo-sha countered. It could be important to the case. Nico thought about it, and then she told the guard, just have Emery come in. I wish to speak with the housekeeper alone. The guard left as Samba grumbled, and then the housekeeper came in and bowed to the mistress. I hear that Lady Rai has come to visit me. Nico spoke to the housekeeper. I am accused of committing 2 murders. Why would she want to come and visit a would-be murderess? I do not know, Emery replied. Should I turn her away? I could tell her you are not feeling well. Or you could tell her that I am not feeling well. Samba suggested again as she motioned to herself and said, sick person here. Horo-sha turned to the mistress and said, I heard Uncle Tadao just recently married. Have you ever met Lady Rai before? I have not, Nico replied. Uncle Tadao's first wife disliked me as much as him, and we never socialized. Maybe you should see her, Horo-sha suggested. Sora spoke up, or you could send her away. Sick person here and all. Horo-sha smiled. The house physician could be so funny, and then she thought about what she had learned from Sora and said, I would like to get a sense of this woman and maybe acquire a sense of Uncle Tadao. Nico nodded and told the housekeeper, show Lady Rai in. Emery left and returned with Lady Rai and her lady's maid. Lady Rai was still wearing her black veil. Lady Rai paused at the entrance as her lady's maid folded the umbrella that had been shading her head. Before they entered, Horo-sha went and stood some distance away from Nico, and Samba as if to blend into the background. Gaka Nico, the lady's maid, spoke as she and Lady Rai entered. I am Higgins, and while my lady is observing Chinmoku, days of mourning, I will be her voice. Nico motioned to the table she had moved to before they entered, and said, come join me. Thank you. Iga spoke for her mistress. Lady Rai sat at the table while her lady's maid stood beside her. One of my housemaids informed me of the passing of your mother. Nico spoke to Lady Rai. You have my condolences. The lady's maid leaned down to her mistress, and Lady Rai whispered to Igas, though it sounded more like humming to the Ronin. You are too kind, Lady Gaka, the lady's maid relayed after she straightened. Please, call me Nico. We are family, Lady Rai whispered to the lady's maid. Thank you, Lady Nico. You are as kind as I have heard. Have you heard about my kindness from your husband? Nico inquired. No, Iga spoke for Lady Rai. He does not speak about you except on the rare occasion he speaks about how he dislikes you. I am not my husband and have decided to reserve my opinion of you until I have gotten to know you better. A housemaid came in and cleared the tray and tea set that was on the table. Are you hungry, Lady Rai? Nico inquired. I could have the housemaid bring us some refreshment. The lady's maid leaned down to her mistress, and then she relayed, thank you, but I had refreshment before coming here. I was wanting to talk to you. About what? Nico inquired. Iga stated, Lady Rai relayed much of what she would like to talk about to me, including some answers to some questions you might have. The lady's maid paused and then said, I see that the Ronin detective is here. She. Nico started to say, but then paused and said instead, Horo-sha. I would like to introduce Lady Rai and Igas to you. She approached and bowed to the women and then said, greetings. You should join us, Igas spoke. Maybe we should have that tea and refreshment Lady Gaka offered us. Horo-sha had just eaten, but she said, I could use a little food. We will have refreshments then, Nico stated and then nodded to the housemaid, who was still in the room, and she hurried off. We will eat while we get to know one another as any family should. Life lessons from tea. When pouring tea as in life, one must be aware of where the liquid falls as with our words. And the cup is fine, aiming for the center, but stray in the least and something might slip out. Chapter 25. As any family should. Wagashi. Wagashi were traditional Japanese confections that were served with tea. They looked like little cakes. The Red Clover residence. Lady Gaka, Higgins began. I have found with age that it does not benefit me to circle the point, so I will be plain. Why should I not believe that you killed those two men? Of all the questions to ask my mistress, Samba yelled as she started to get out of bed as if she would beat Lady Rai. Nico believed her friend would have if she had not been so weakened by her near drowning that she couldn't get out of bed. Samba, quiet, Nico ordered her and then faced Lady Rai, not sure how to answer her question. The lady's maid continued, I have heard that the Ronin believes you have been framed. Why do you believe someone would have done such a thing? Do you have many enemies? Outside of Uncle Tadao, who I don't consider an enemy, I don't know of anyone who hates me, Nico stated. Just because you have no knowledge of someone's hatred, it does not mean it does not exist, the lady's maid said. Nico inquired, if you were in my position, what would you have done? I would have hired the samurai detective to clear my name. Higgins spoke. You were forced to settle for an unknown Ronin. If I were you and I was innocent of the crime, I would look at those who profess their love for me. Lady Rai stared at the house physician as the lady's maid said, I would also scrutinize friends who swear they would never betray me. Samba wanted to yell at Lady Rai, but she remained quiet for her friend as it was her wish. Higgins finished with, and I would doubt a would-be detective could save me in the little time that was given to him. The housemaid returned with tea and a dessert of wagashi and set them on the table. Nico spoke once the housemaid left. You have given me a lot to think about. How can I repay your wise guidance? Allow me to help you further, the lady's maid replied. Tell me how your investigation goes. Do you have any suspects? Horo-sha wasn't sure if Nico would answer, but then she said, as is my luck, we have no suspects? We do not know. If this is a conspiracy, why someone would frame me? Conspiracy? Higgins questioned. Nico glanced at Horo-sha, wondering if she should say anything. Nico moved forward and stated, we do believe this is the work of at least two people. We don't think one person could do all the things that were done to frame me. Higgins said, if what you say is true, the Ronin has much he must uncover. Nico played the hostess and poured Lady Rai and then the Ronin some tea. She poured herself a cup last. Nico then offered the two of them the little cakes. They ate in silence a few minutes, though Lady Rai did not eat or drink. Her lady's maid eyed the tea and wagashi as if she was hungry, but Higgins never said anything. Horo-sha was full, but the wagashi were so good that she ate 3 of them. She even started eyeing the 3 that remained on Lady Rai's plate. Lady Nico, Higgins began. We heard that there were clues left with the bodies, and Lady Rai grabbed Higgins' wrist and shook her head, and then the lady's maid dropped that line of inquiry as she stated, we should not intrude too much into the investigation. Lady Rai stood, pushing her chair away from the table. Higgins said, it would seem that my mistress wishes to retire. If we may, she would like to return at another time and visit with you again. Nico nodded, still a little wary of the reason Lady Rai had come. Lady Rai started for the door with Higgins in tow. She paused at the entrance, and the lady's maid went out first and opened the umbrella. Lady Rai stepped out and walked within its shade as she headed for the White Daffodil residence. Samba waited a few moments more, and then she blurted, what was all that about? I think I would have preferred Uncle Tadao had come to visit. The visit was strange, Horo-sha agreed. It was almost as if Lady Rai was a detective. Gato suggested, maybe she is an amateur sleuth. Either way, we all should be careful around her, Samba said. Lady Rai may have lied. She may have the same dislike of Nico as Uncle Tadao. Soul of truth. I have to know no matter what it is. I must know the truth. It is the only thing that will save my friend. Chapter 26. The Groom. The Red Clover residence. Hope had entered Horo-sha's mind when she entered and found Samba awake. She had prayed the house physician could give at least some clues about the one who attacked her or maybe even identify them. Samba wasn't able to do either, but hope remained. Lady Rai's visit also concerned Horo-sha. She believed the new arrival had lied to them. Lady Rai already had an opinion of Nico. Horo-sha just wasn't sure what that opinion was. Lady Rai didn't seem to imply that Nico was guilty. She would have to keep an eye on Uncle Tadao's wife and delve into her person and past, but there was something Horo-sha needed to do before that. Something she had been waiting to do. Nico, it is time, Horo-sha said. It is time that you went and saw the groom. She can't, Samba yelled. He has been dead for a few hours now. His body would be. She couldn't bring herself to say decaying, so Samba stated instead, unseemly to see. You should not go. Why should I not see this man? Nico asked her friend. Are you going to tell me who he is and why you were arguing with him? Samba began as she glanced at the Ronin. She might have told her friend the truth, but the Ronin's presence seemed to quell her desire to be forthwith with what she knew, and Samba said instead, "You should not go." Horo-sha threatened slightly, hoping to coax the truth from her. "Tell us who he is and why you were arguing with him, and then I won't need to show Nico a dead man." Samba began, and then she looked at the mistress as if something from their past prevented her to be honest. Samba turned her gaze away and said, "I'm sorry." "I am too," Nico said. "Come, Yoke. Take me to the groom." Chapter 27. Something Unexpected. The Red Clover Residence's courtyard. Horo-sha debated how she would prepare Nico for what she would see and the smell. Both Kipa and the groom were starting to reek. Their bodies would have to be put in the ground soon. She decided it would be best to just come right out and tell her. "Nico, I need to warn you," Horo-sha began as she and Gato escorted the mistress to the vault building. As Samba said, the groom has been dead for a while now, and so has Kipa. They are starting to smell. "I know," Nico stated. "I am prepared." Horo-sha went in the vault room first and pulled the straw mat away from the groom's face. Nico looked at him, and she didn't seem to recognize him, but then she gasped as she covered her mouth. Nico quickly turned and ran out of the room. "Stay with her," Horo-sha ordered Gato, and he chased after the mistress. She covered the groom back up and then started after Nico, but when she turned back around, the cook was standing at the entrance to the vault room. "Komi, you look troubled. Did you see the groom?" Horo-sha asked as she glanced back at him. "I forget how people react when they see a dead body. I have seen several in the course of my work. I came to ask you where you wanted to have your evening meal, and I am not shocked at seeing a dead man," the cook replied, and then she shook her head and rephrased, "I am shocked, but I am more shocked by something else." "What is it?" "The man." "He was the groom." Horo-sha nodded. The groom. He was the one who approached me to spy on the household. "What a faulty we have stumbled across," Horo-sha spoke. "Did someone kill the groom to frame Nico, or did someone kill him to also silence him?" Unexpected haiku. A face recognized. A man with connected past. What was his purpose? Life lessons from tea. Trouble can be as unique as tea. Trouble comes in many flavors and degrees of taste. Beware the trouble you can't taste. Chapter 28. The blackmailer revealed. The Red Clover Residence. Horo-sha arrived to find Gato outside and Nico within, yelling at Samba. "The mistress is very upset," Gato stated. "She ran all the way back here. She even tripped, and I had to help her back to her feet, but then she once again ran." She didn't say anything to him and went inside. Samba and Nico were yelling at each other, and they both stopped when she entered. "I have to know who he is," Horo-sha spoke. The house physician blurted, "He is an old lover of mine." "Samba," Nico scolded. "Don't say such things." Horo-sha waited for them to clear things up, and when neither one of them said any more, she demanded, "I have to know who he is to you, Nico. How do you know the groom?" "It will get out," Samba spoke as she knelt before her mistress and grabbed hold of her wrist. "It will get out, and then your reputation will be ruined." "I have to decide which is more important to me," Nico stated as she looked down at her friend. "I can keep my reputation and take it to the grave with me, or..." She turned to the Ronin and said, "The groom." "Akino was one of my frequent clients when I worked at the brothel." "Was Akino the man that Eshi outbited and took from him the exclusive rights to you?" "Was the groom the man you mentioned that had been obsessed with you?" "He was. Akino knew your secret and had a reason to get back at both you and Eshi," Horo-sha said. "It sounds like this was what he would have attempted to blackmail you with. If Akino only wanted to blackmail you, why did he come to work as the groom? He could have blackmailed you with a simple message. He didn't need to be on the estate." Horo-sha considered all she had learned and then said, "Nico, I have some distressing news." "What is that?" "The cook tells me that the groom is the one who tried to hire her to spy on this household." Samba got back on her feet as she said, "He is dead. What does it matter now? I believe the groom was working for someone, and if he was, whoever he was working for has to know about Nico's past." Horo-sha replied, "They may even be from your past. You mentioned your father had gambling debts and you were sold to the brothel to cover them. Did you completely settle your debt before leaving?" "I did," Nico answered. "You also mentioned that you dealt with the partner and not madam when you settled your debt. Would this madam hold a grudge because you left in such a way?" "I don't think so," Nico replied. "She ran a business. It was not personal. I left as I could once my debt was paid." "What about other customers?" Horo-sha asked. "Would any of them hold a grudge against you for leaving?" "I can't think of any," Nico answered. "I would like to talk about your earrings again, the ones of the carp streamer," Horo-sha began. And then she asked, "Where did you get them?" "A messenger delivered them one day." "Oh, about 2 years ago. I always thought Eshi had sent them to me as a gift, so I wore them when special events came along. When the one that had gone missing turned up on Kipa, I asked my husband if he had gifted them to me. As she said he had never seen them before I started wearing them. Horo-sha nodded as she spoke. I thought as much. Someone sent them to you. 2 years. At least 2 years someone has been planning this scheme. Whoever the mastermind is, they are from your past. Nico thought about what the Ronin said as she glanced out the window. Seeing the setting sun, there was a lot to grasp. She sat in silence a few moments and then said, Yoke, you should go eat. You can't work on a stomach only full of wagashi. Horo-sha smiled, hearing the mothering side of her friend. She was so glad that she took the job with the Gaka family. Horo-sha was able to meet all these wonderful people and gain a few friendships she would always cherish. I will, Horo-sha said as she headed for the door. Komi told me she would set up my meal at my residence. I will go there and eat and allow my mind to quiet itself. She started out, then turned, and said, You two should also eat. Everyone will need their strength to face the new day that promises to bring a unique tea. She left, and then Samba turned to Nico and said, Yoke says the most bizarre things. I don't know. I believe I understood her this time. We will be facing unique possibilities tomorrow. Soul of tea. I turned away from the tea of revenge. I wanted to savor the sweet tea of peace, a peace where my heart is at rest. Chapter 29. New paths and new friends. The Red Lotus residence. Food and rest. That was what Horo-sha allowed herself to focus on as she headed to her residence. She entered and found the kitchen girl there setting up her evening meal. Kaioi, Musum called out as she smiled at seeing Horo-sha. Komi told me to come and set this up for you. She noticed there were settings for two and said, Riko has not returned yet. Komi also suggested that I eat with you if you wanted the company. Musum said. Horo-sha had planned on eating alone and allow her mind to rest from work, but she believed she could still do so with the older girl. Musum could distract her for an hour or two from the case. Komi always has very good ideas, Horo-sha stated. And then the two of them sat and ate. They ate in silence for a while, and then Musum began. You told me earlier that I had an opportunity to find a family here. A place to belong. Why did you say such a thing? You seem like how I was not that long ago, Horo-sha replied. I was going in one direction, but I was actually wanting to go in another. I was wanting to go in a direction where I could find a family to belong to and friends I could depend on. The kitchen girl asked, What direction were you going in? I mentioned it before. I was heading down the path of revenge. What path are you on now? Musum asked. A more peaceful path. A path where I can help others. Do you regret changing paths? No, Horo-sha answered. I found my sister and I have Riko by my side. And because of my new path, I have made new friends. I have chosen the sweet tea as my path and rejected the tea of revenge. Its leaves were very bitter and hard to swallow. I prefer the sweetness of helping others. I think it suits me. Life lessons from tea. Tea can be bitter as one's own heart can become bitter. Ghost haiku. Scary words. Dark thoughts. Stories. Disembodied souls. Set my heart racing. Chapter 30. Ghost on the Wind. The Red Lotus residence. Musum and Horo-sha continued to enjoy their meal. And then the kitchen girl suggested, We should tell stories. What sort of stories? Have you ever been told a ghost story? Horo-sha thought about it and then said, When I was really young, my brother used to tell them to me. They frightened me so much that I would insist on climbing into bed with them. When I was older, the crying samurai told me a few, but then the priestess scolded him. Why did the priestess scold him? Horo-sha laughed before she answered. Because he frightened me. I couldn't sleep for several nights after he told me each tale. The priestess was the one who had to stay up with me, and she lost a lot of sleep. Kaioi, you are so amusing. I should tell you a ghost story and see if I can frighten you. I'll take that challenge. Musum blew out all the candles in the room but one. She took the one lit candle from the table and lifted it to her face to set the mood. The glow lit up her face in a hellish mask as the kitchen girl began. It is said if you go into the heart of the forest that surrounds this estate right at midnight, you will hear the cries of a baby. A baby, Horo-sha repeated as the frights from her past crept up behind her. Yes, a newborn, Musum replied. In the heart of the forest, there is a lake, and it is said that a woman went and delivered her ill-gained baby at the lake's edge. Horo-sha picked up one of the floor pillows and held it in front of her as she asked, Why would someone purposely deliver a baby by a lake? The kitchen girl moved her torso toward the Ronin, allowing the candle flame to distort her face more. And then she continued, Why does anyone go to the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night? They have evil intentions. Musum paused and then continued her tale. The woman lifted her baby as his uncut umbilical cord dangled down from him. The boy opened his mouth and screamed at the moon that shone down on him. The baby was so happy to be alive. Everything was so new. The night, the touch of his mother, breathing the pine-scented air. The woman looked at her son and said, I want nothing to do with a man's pride. She took the baby, drowned it in the lake, and then buried his body in the cold gray mud. What was even more horrible was that she buried her baby alive. He had not died when she tried to drown him. Horo-sha gasped and asked, how could she? He was her son. The woman believed the baby would stop her from gaining something she wanted more than him. Musum replied and then continued her story. The baby boy was so enraged that his existence had been stolen before he could experience life that his spirit still haunts the forest. The baby cries, drawing people to the lake, and then the baby drowns them. It is such a sad story, Horo-sha said as she gripped the floor pillow tighter. It is supposed to be scary, the kitchen girl stated, a little disappointed. And then she asked, why do you think it is sad? The baby. He wanted to experience life, but his mother, who was supposed to care and protect him, stole that from him. I would be angry too. Musum peered at her for a few moments and then said, you are not what I expected, one who is not the great samurai detective. No, I have a long way to go before I can become the great Ronin detective, Horo admitted, and then the two girls laughed together. They finished their meal together, and then Musum left. Soul of an investigation. I had an idea in the night. A person I should talk to. He knows many things. Sees many things. He is a good source for any detective. Chapter 31. Kyoi's message. The next morning, the Red Clover residence. Mistress, the kitchen girl is here, Gato spoke as he entered. Nico said, send her in. Musum entered and stated, I have a message from Kyoi. Who is Kyoi? You know her by many names, but the one you are the fondest of is Yoke. Musum replied. Did Horo-sha tell you? Nico questioned, implying the Ronin's omission. I figured it out, Musum answered with a little pride. You said Yoke had a message for me. The kitchen girl nodded and said, I wasn't there when she came, but Kyoi told the cook. And then the cook told me. Kyoi said to tell you that she needed to go to town for a few hours. She's going to see the town postings chief about something job-related, I think. She wanted someone to tell you so that you wouldn't worry while she is gone. Nico turned to Gato and said, you can return to your post. The head guard bowed and left. Musum looked around and said, I see that your friend is gone. Yes, Samba felt up to taking a walk through the koi garden, though I for one would not want to go back in there. Good. We are alone, Musum said and then removed an object from her kimono. I have something special for you. Is it from Yoke? No, Musum replied as she stared at the object in her hand. This thing is just from me. She held up a glass bottle with a flower pattern on it and asked, isn't it pretty? It's a very special bottle. I think you will agree. Life lessons from tea. The night is like tea. When it is at its darkest, the flavor is the strongest. Chapter 32. A new source. The previous evening. The Red Lotus residence. Riko had left the paper lantern in their residence, so once Musum left, Horo-sha decided she had time for one more interview before she retired for the night. She lit the paper lantern and headed to where she thought she might find the steward, and he was taking care of the horses. You have more questions for me? Hakiro inquired. I do, she replied and then looked around. How long before you hire a replacement groom? I did so today, the steward replied. He should arrive sometime tomorrow. Could you have one of your servants do me a favor tomorrow? Have them go to town and discover where the old groom's mother lives and then have the old groom come to the estate. She removed a coin from her kimono and held it out as she said, have the servant give the old groom this copper for his trouble and also have the servant stay with his mother while he journeys here. I have a few questions for him. I can do that, the steward said as he took the coin. Thank you, she spoke and started to leave. Horo-sha turned back around and said, Hakiro, before I go, tell me, what was the groom making a day? He made 40 zinc a day, not 80. No, not for a groom. If he was a horse breeder, he might have made that much, but we don't breed horses here. Horo-sha considered what she had learned, and then she felt as if someone was tapping her on the shoulder. No one was, but it was just a sensation she was having. One last question. If I wanted to talk to someone who would know a lot about the brothel, who would I see? The steward thought about it and then replied, you could talk to the town postings chief. They do know quite a bit about the goings-on in other towns and in their own town. Tea haiku. Morning rise. Tea break. The sun has started its day. Tea before my day. Chapter 33. Town postings chief. Kaizuru. Kaizuru was a Japanese smoking pipe used for smoking a small serving of kazami, a shredded tobacco product that was fine as hair. The mouthpiece and bowl were made from metal with a shaft of bamboo stretching in between. The bowl was much smaller than Western-style pipes. Many kaizuru were engraved by skilled artisans and were a status symbol for the owner. The next morning, on the edge of the town of Kirimatsu, the town postings chief's office, Horo-sha entered and found an elderly man smoking a kaizuru. He was alone in his office, poring over messages. You have come back, the elderly man said as he looked up from his desk. I thought you would be in here sooner. My current job is taking longer than I expected, Horo-sha replied, and then she gave him a 3 zinc and asked, can you relay a message for me to the ones who wanted to hire me and let them know it could take me another week before I can come? Sure can, the town postings chief replied as he started writing the note. I was talking to the steward of the Gaka Estate, and he tells me that you know a lot of goings on here and in the surrounding towns. As chief, I do hear a lot of things, he replied as he finished the note. What I'm wanting to know about would have happened about 20 years ago at the brothel in the nearby town. Horo-sha spoke. Madam's place. I know it well, but I haven't been in years. I don't think she runs it anymore. What can you tell me about Madam? Horo-sha questioned. Not much. I don't even know her name. Everyone seemed to like her, even her girls. I thought her daughter would have taken over the place when she did retire, but I heard they both left. Do you know her daughter's name? I don't remember, but it was a short name, he replied. Madam I like, but her daughter had a mean streak and could be ruthless if you ever crossed her. Oh, I remember now. Her name was Hado. The feeling that tapped Horo-sha on the shoulder when the steward told her how much the groom really made seized her shoulder like the fangs of a tiger, a nagging tiger. I can still remember the smell of the place, he spoke, reminiscing as he stood and went to a window and peered outside as if seeing the building in the distance. Madam had all her girls wear the same perfume. I believe it was made from a special orchid that smelled like vanilla. It had a name that had to do with the night. It might have been because the flower was one of those night-blooming orchids. Horo-sha's light green eyes widened as she uttered, Evening Vanilla. No, that wasn't the name, but you were close, he stated. It was. The flower was called Eventide Orchid. Eventide Orchid, she repeated. Yes, that was it, he said as he continued to stare out the window, remembering the bygone years. I can still smell the perfume. It was like... He spoke and then turned around to find Horo-sha had left. Where did the Ronin go? Soul of a tiger. I can't believe what I have heard. Has a clue been staring me in the face, and have I ignored it? Has a nagging tiger been trying to tell me something? Chapter 34. Suspicions. Outside the town postings chief's office, Horo-sha ran out the door and paused in the middle of the town, getting her bearings. She had missed something. Horo-sha raced back to the Gaka Estate, and the guard manning the south gate let her in. She ran for the Red Clove residence when the steward called out to her. Ronin, I sent a servant into town as you requested, the steward began. The servant was friends with the old groom, so he went to see a lady friend of the old groom. I was correct. The old groom was an orphan and had no mother. No one has seen the old groom since he went into town that day. I was afraid of that, she said. I fear the old groom will never be found. He is most likely dead. Horo-sha needed to rush off, but she wanted to make sure of her destination. So she asked, do you know where your mistress is? I have not seen her today, the steward replied. The housekeeper walked out of the peacock garden, and Horo-sha hurried over to her and asked, have you seen Nico? I was just coming to see the steward about her, the housekeeper replied. Samba had gone for a walk in the koi garden, and when she returned to her residence, the mistress was nowhere to be found. She questioned Gado. He only knew that the kitchen girl had stopped by. He said the kitchen girl entered the residence and then came out some time later. She talked with Gado for a few minutes and left. He didn't even know that the mistress was gone until Samba told him. They, along with the 2 guards stationed at the Red Clover residence, are looking for the mistress. A distraction, Horo-sha spoke. Musu must have distracted him so that Nico could slip out. But where would she go? And why would she go alone? Samba and Gado came running to them from the private path, and Samba asked, have you found Nico? No one knows where she is, Horo-sha replied. Tell me, did you notice anything out of the ordinary when you returned to your residence? No, nothing was out of place, Samba replied. But there was this smell. It was vanilla. The Eventide Orchid, Horo-sha muttered. Gado, quickly find the town magistrate and keep an eye on him. Start yelling if Nico is with him. Samba, you and the housekeeper rush to the Yellow Lotus studio and tell Eshi that his wife might be in danger. Nico could be with Eshi, but if that is so, she would not have needed to sneak out. She turned to the steward and told him, Hakairo, hurry to the tiny kitchen and see if Musum is there. If I find her, what do I do? The steward asked. Have her stay in the kitchen until I arrive. I have some questions for her. Samba inquired, where are you going? I am going to Uncle Tadau's residence. I don't imagine anyone has looked there for Nico. Why would she go there? Samba inquired. Why indeed? Horo-sha replied. Frenzied haiku. A desperate search. I worry for my friend's life. Least possible place. Chapter 35. Searching for Nico. The White Daffodil residence was located in the southwest corner of the estate. Horo-sha was halfway there when she came upon Musum. You looked flustered, Kyoe. "Have you talked with Lady Evening Vanilla?" "Not today," Horo-sha replied as she stopped and asked, "Do you know where she is?" "Maybe, but I don't know if I should tell you where she is." "Musum, why did you go to the Red Clover residence?" "Komi wanted me to deliver the message you left for Lady Evening Vanilla." "I had hoped Komi would have delivered the message herself," Horo-sha muttered. And then she spoke. "Samba said she smelled vanilla when she entered her residence." "Was that your doing?" Musum grinned and said, "It was. I showed Lady Evening Vanilla a perfume bottle that had been gifted to me. It has the most filthy sweet smell." She considered the meaning behind the kitchen girl's words and then asked, "What happened after you showed her the bottle?" "She wanted to know where I got it," Musum replied. "I told her I got it from Uncle Tadao. She immediately wanted to talk to him but alone, so I helped her escape. I talked to the guard outside while she slipped away. Guards are good for preventing people from coming in. Not so good at preventing people from going out. Not unless they are looking for them to escape." Horo-sha turned and ran for the White Daffodil residence. The kitchen girl pursued her, and Horo-sha questioned her as they ran. "Why did you lie when you told me why you call the groom?" 80? Musum questioned. "Why would you say I lied? Did you figure out something?" "I believe I have. All the names you give to people, they are clever," Horo-sha spoke as she glanced at the kitchen girl. Musum somehow knew the groom's connection to the 8 copper or his connection to Nico. But how could she? Musum arrived the same day as she and Riko. Horo-sha spoke. 8 copper is 80 zinc. "Do you call the groom 80 because of the 8 copper that was branded into his palm? Or do you call him 80 because you know what the 8 copper represents? What do you think?" Musum questioned her. "What I think?" Horo-sha began as she glanced at her again, and then she admitted, "I don't want to think. It would be so heart-wrenching if what I am thinking is true." She hesitated asking, but she had to know. So Horo-sha began. "Musum, did you?" They entered the White Daffodil residence, and Horo-sha paused. Musum paused beside her. "Why have you stopped? Don't you want to find Lady Evening Vanilla?" Horo-sha drew her sword and said, "Where are Uncle Tadao's guards?" "No one is here." The kitchen girl's smirk vanished as she observed what she hadn't noticed. Musum placed a hand inside the sleeve of her kimono as if she was going to remove something from it. "Gaka Tadao." Horo-sha called to the uncle. She heard no one within the residence, so she called out, "Nico." She literally proceeded past the entryway after quickly removing her sandals. Musum did the same. Horo-sha entered the main part of the residence as the kitchen girl followed behind her as cautious. Horo-sha found Nico within and relief poured over her soul. She started to go to her friend when she saw a bloody knife in her hand and Uncle Tadao dead on the floor with his throat cut. Horo-sha noticed a glass perfume bottle lying on the floor with an orchid painted on it. Nico. Life lessons from tea. Guilt is like tea. One can believe they are looking at wrongdoing, but until scrutiny, aroma inspection, and careful tasting have occurred, one cannot be sure of guilt. Chapter 36. Who and what was found? The White Daffodil residence. Nico slowly turned to them, her face vexed by the horror before her. The nagging tiger that had sunk its teeth into Horo-sha's shoulder ripped her flesh like a starving tiger. Horo-sha was frozen in the moment until Musum screamed an agonizing scream. She rushed over to Uncle Tadao and cried over his still body. Musum cradled his head in her arms and gave Nico a fierce glare, wishing for her death. Horo-sha hurried over to Nico and took the bloody knife from her hand. Nico turned and looked at her, but it was as if she didn't see the Ronin. Horo-sha examined the blood-stained blade and noticed an engraving. She grabbed a cloth napkin from a nearby table and placed the knife within. Samba, the housekeeper, and as she rushed in, they had heard the kitchen girl's screams. "Samba, take Nico to your residence. I believe she is in shock," Horo-sha ordered. The house physician rushed over to her friend and grabbed Nico by the wrist. She gently tugged on her friend until Nico followed her. As she moved to her side and questioned the Ronin, "What happened?" Tears streamed down the kitchen girl's face as she screamed the answer before Horo-sha could utter it. "She killed him. Lady Evening Vanilla killed Uncle." He started to move to his uncle's side, but Horo-sha grabbed his elbow and said, "It is too late for him, but it might not be for your wife. Muster all of your guards that you can find and go to the Red Clover residence. Let no one in until I arrive." As she started to inquire why he needed to do such a thing, but Horo-sha spoke before he could. "I fear the governor will be forced to allow the town magistrate to deliver his form of justice. The governor will be summoned soon. Hurry, muster your guards and protect your wife." He ran out, and Horo-sha turned and faced Musum as she cradled the older man. She wondered if the kitchen girl was putting on an act. Horo-sha wanted to question her, but she knew she would get no answers. She walked over to the glass bottle that was on the floor and picked it up. The perfume bottle was decorated by a painted eventide orchid. Horo-sha started out when Musum yelled at her. "Where are you going?" "To safeguard the Gaka family," Horo-sha replied. and then she asked one of her questions she had decided she should wait on, but she was fighting against an ogre of time. Did you know when you gave Nico the perfume bottle this would happen? What are you asking? She held up the perfume bottle and rephrased her question. Did you know by giving Nico the perfume bottle the end result would be Gaka Tadao's death? Musum's mind raced as she thought over what the Ronin had implied. She never answered her, but Horo-sha had her answer. She believed the kitchen girl had been used as a messenger. Horo-sha started out and then glanced back. If Musum was only a messenger, how did she know Gaka Tadao enough to refer to him as uncle? Soul of tea. I know in my heart as I know I love tea that no one in the household could have done these crimes. If I am correct, who then is left? Chapter 37. The Two Sons. The Manor. The Shoin. Sora, Horo-sha called out and then slid the shoji to the side and entered to find the eldest son and the youngest son within. A housemaid was delivering food, but Horo-sha noted there was only tea and no sake. Sora stood from his floor table and asked, "What is it? How long have you and your brother been in the Shoin?" He glanced at his younger brother, and then Sora replied, "At least 2 hours. We are nearly finished with our meal. Have you done what I asked of you?" She questioned. "I have," Sora replied. "I have not left my brother's side." "What is going on?" Itsuki inquired as he also stood. "Your great-uncle has been murdered," Horo-sha informed them. The housemaid gasped. Itsuki questioned, "Who killed him?" "Someone wants us to believe that your mother did," she replied. "Nico?" Itsuki exclaimed. "Uncle Tadao would make 3 murders. Nico cannot be doing this. Who would want to do this?" He glanced at Sora, and then Itsuki asked, "Why did you want Sora not to leave my side?" She questioned, "He did not tell you." "He did not," Itsuki replied. "I wanted Sora to stay with you to safeguard his life. I did not know that it would safeguard his innocence and yours." "Innocence? You mean in our uncle's death?" Itsuki spoke, and then he asked, "Why were you afraid that Sora would be killed?" "I will let him explain," Horo-sha answered. "I need to safeguard your mother's life." Scheme haiku. A plan to take down. Treacherous. Sharp knife in back. A plot to hurt. Maim. Chapter 38. The scheme strikes again. The Red Clover residence. Horo-sha arrived, and several of the guards were surrounding the residence. She went inside and found Gato, Eshi, Samba, and Nico within. "Has she spoken?" "Not a word," Samba answered the Ronin. Horo-sha inquired as she unwrapped the knife. "Do either of you two recognize this?" "I noticed an engraving of what looks like the symbol for the Lotus Frog clan." The two of them looked over the blade. Samba replied, "I don't recognize it." Horo-sha noticed how Eshi reacted and asked, "What about you?" "It does look like a knife that I once had. My father had gifted it to me, but I lost it about 20 years ago." She set the napkin with the knife on a table and moved over to the mistress. Horo-sha took both of her hands, and Nico looked at her. "I am sorry that you had to go through whatever you went through, but I must know what happened." Nico nodded, and then she went and sat at the table after the young woman released her. Horo-sha moved and stood by her side. "The kitchen girl came to deliver your message," Nico began. "Musum." "Something else happened," Horo-sha spoke, urging her to continue. "What did Musum do?" "She gave me a perfume bottle. She gave me my old perfume bottle that I had while I worked at the brothel. Each bottle was hand-painted and each design distinct." "What happened next?" Horo-sha questioned to move her through the horrible memory. "I told her I didn't want it, and then the kitchen girl sprayed a mist of the perfume. The memories it brought. I thought I had put all of those dreadful memories behind me." Eshi went over and took his wife's hand, and Nico found the courage to continue. "I asked the kitchen girl where she acquired the bottle. She told me that Uncle Tadao had given it to her. I was shocked and horrified, and then I was enraged. I went over to his residence." "How did you get by Gato?" Horo-sha inquired. Nico replied, "The kitchen girl. She distracted him for me. I went directly to the White Daffodil residence. No one was outside, so I went up to the entrance and called out. When no one answered, I entered. I discovered Gaka Tadao on the floor, but when I went to check on him, a hooded figure attacked me. They had a knife. They tried to kill me with the knife, but somehow I evaded them. They dropped the knife while trying to stab me, and when I picked it up, they ran off. It wasn't that much longer that you and the kitchen girl showed up. Gaka Eshi, the town magistrate, called. Eshi, Gato, and the Ronin all went outside. The town magistrate was there with 4 of his deputies. They were all ready for a fight. Nico, I have seen your third victim, the town magistrate yelled. The governor might have protected you from the murders of a mere groom and guard, but he will not protect you from murdering a member of the Gaka family. I have sent for the governor. He should be here within the hour. Do not try to leave this residence or order or not. I will strike you down. Horo-sha went back into the residence, and Eshi and Gato followed. Eshi asked, What do we do? Stay by your wife's side, Horo-sha replied. I need to go find out why Gaka Tadau's guards were nowhere in sight when we arrived at the residence. Someone had to send them away. But who? She glanced at Nico and had no encouraging words for her. So she told Eshi, the words you could not find before. You need to find them now. Nico needs you. She needs your strength. Life lessons from sorrow. Sorrow can numb your heart and rip it out at the same time. Sorrow is a beast no one should ever have to face alone. Chapter 39. Questioning Lady Rai. The White Daffodil Residence. The guards that should have been at the residence when the Ronin first entered were now positioned around the building. Horo-sha could hear yelling from within, but when she was announced, the argument stopped. A guard escorted the Ronin inside where Lady Rai, her lady's maid, and Musum were gathered around the body of Gaka Tadau. Musum was still crying over him in a kneeling position, though her tears had subsided and she no longer cradled his head. A clock on a nearby table chimed the noon hour. Lady Rai turned to Horo-sha, leaned to her lady's maid, and Higgins relayed, "You should not be here. Ronin, this is a family matter." Horo-sha looked at Musum, who rested her head on Gaka Tadau's chest, and then questioned, "A family matter? Leave." Higgins spoke as she raised her voice. "Do you know who I am?" Horo-sha inquired. "You are some lowly Ronin," Higgins answered. She ignored the lady's maid and turned her focus on Lady Rai, and Horo-sha declared, "I am the Ronin detective. Gaka Eshi, master of this estate and head of the Gaka family, issued me jurisdiction over this estate. I am second only to his authority. Who are you to tell me to come or go? How dare you?" The lady's maid spoke. "I have a mind to call in the guards and have them beat you. No one speaks to." Lady Rai lifted her hand and silenced Higgins. The lady's maid leaned to her mistress, and Horo-sha again heard what sounded like humming. The lady's maid nodded a few times, and then she spoke. "Musum, is this correct?" Higgins asked. "Does this lowly Ronin have authority only under Eshi?" "Kaiwi does," the kitchen girl replied. "Lady Rai," Horo-sha started before anyone else could say anything more. "Why were there no guards protecting Gaka Tadau? He should have had one or two with him. No guard was here when I arrived. He was unprotected," Musum cried out. "Did you know this would happen? Did you know that Lady Evening Vanilla would kill him?" "Quiet, child," the lady's maid snapped. "Gaka Tadau is none of your concern. Leave." Musum turned to the lady's maid, and Horo-sha thought she would glare at both her and Lady Rai. She saw no disdain aimed at them. The kitchen girl got up and left, purposely running into the shoulder of Horo-sha. As she left, she took Musum hit without complaint. Knowing how angry and upset Musum was, and the kitchen girl had no other outlet to release her sorrow and anger. "Where were the guards?" Horo-sha repeated. "We are looking into it," Higgins relayed for her lady. Lady Rai clapped her hands, and a guard entered. Higgins stated, "Tell the Ronin why you left your post when you were supposed to be guarding the master." The guard looked frightened as he answered, "I was guarding the master." "Why were you alone?" Horo-sha inquired when he didn't relay an answer. Master Tadau sent the rest of the guards with Mistress Rai as she walked the peacock garden she had become fond of. The guard replied, "I remained at my post until Master Tadau himself ordered me to leave the premises." "Did you see or hear anyone?" Horo-sha inquired. "I thought I heard a woman within, so I thought nothing of his request to be alone." Higgins said, "Nico must have somehow convinced the master to send his protection away." Horo-sha questioned Lady Rai, "Were you ever alone during the time your husband was killed?" "The guards and I can testify that our mistress was never alone." Higgins relayed, "Do you know of anyone who would have wanted to hurt your husband?" "Only Nico?" Higgins spoke. Her hatred of him was as deep as his hatred for her. Horo-sha started out as she had finished questioning them, and then she paused and added, "I am sorry for your loss. I didn't know your husband, but he did seem to love you. I know what it is to lose someone who loves you. Soul of determination. I have to save my friend, and I will put it all on the line to do so." Chapter 40. Any last chances? The manor. On her return, the steward informed Horo-sha that she was to meet Eshi within his office, and by the time she arrived, the governor and his guards were already within. Governor Manzo was talking to Eshi, and the town magistrate was also there. Governor Manzo was notably upset as he stated, "Another murder under your watch. Ronin detective." She didn't answer his question but posed one of her own. "Will you be withdrawing your stay of execution?" "I was just talking about that with Gaka Eshi," the governor replied. "I spoke with the kitchen girl before coming here. We came across her as she left the White Daffodil residence. After hearing her testimony, I have decided to retract my stay of execution." Horo-sha questioned, "What did she say?" "That the two of you came across Gaka Nico, who was holding a bloody knife and standing over the body of Gaka Tadau. His throat had been slashed. When do you plan on allowing the town magistrate to proceed with the execution?" Immediately, Governor Manzo replied, "Gaka Tadau is too important of a person to let his murderer go unpunished. You have to give me more time, Horo-sha pleaded. Nico is innocent of all of these crimes. Someone is framing her. If you execute Nico and then I find proof of her innocence, what will that say about your reputation? It will not bode well, but I'll receive less ridicule than if I do not issue a swift beheading. You have to give me more time to prove Nico's innocence, Horo-sha insisted. I will stake my honor on it. What sort of honor would a Ronin have? The governor inquired. I will stake my house's name and my honor on this, Horo-sha reiterated. I am of the house of Shakajuru. Everyone in the room turned to her as she declared her family's name. You can't be, Governor Manzo spoke. The house of Shakajuru fell in one night. The entire family was massacred at their castle estate, and even the branch families of Shakajuru were slaughtered in that same night. All of Shakajuru was wiped out, Horo-sha uttered as she had never been told. Yes, so how can you claim to be of the house of Shakajuru? Governor Manzo asked. I was saved, Horo-sha explained. I did not die in the massacre at the castle estate, and I did not die in the fire. I alone live to seek justice for the ones who slaughtered my entire family. How do I know what you say is true? Governor Manzo inquired. She removed her father's katana and held it up, showing it to the governor as she stated, I have my father's sword. I have Lord Shakajuru Haruto's sword. Let me see, the governor requested. She hesitated, disarming herself, but went ahead and handed over the sword. Governor Manzo took it by its sheath, and then he drew the sword. It is the house of Shakajuru's sword, Steel Crane. The governor spoke with awe. Horo-sha didn't know that the sword had a name and was grateful to learn of it. He sheathed the sword and handed it back. Are you sure you want to put the honor of the house of Shakajuru on the line? Governor Manzo inquired. The town magistrate spoke. I don't understand. Why are you listening to this, Ronin? Fallen or not, the house of Shakajuru deserves our respect. They ruled over their province before Lord Gima, the governor stated, and then asked the Ronin again. Are you sure you want to put the honor of your house on the line? It is all that the house of Shakajuru has left. I do, Horo-sha replied with no hesitation. Governor Manzo stood and said, I can only give you until sunset today. Once the sun sets, Nico's head will also fall. Sword haiku? Steel gleaming in light, drawn fast as fiery lightning, tempered steel. Fierce thoughts, Chapter 41. A temper swifter than a blade. The manor, the main hall. Horo-sha hastily headed for the tiny kitchen after leaving Eshi's office as the one ogre, who was attacking her at every turn, became two. There was the ogre of time and the ogre of reprisal and quick retribution, and they were both harassing her mind. She tried to blot them out, but they were becoming persistent. Eshi was with her, and the town magistrate followed them out. They walked for a few moments in silence, but then, Ronin, the town magistrate called. Horo-sha paused and turned to him as he said, I don't understand the governor granting you any more time. Sure, you spat some nonsense about belonging to the house of Shakajuru. Even if you are a survivor, what does it matter? The supposedly great house of Shakajuru fell in one night. Not such a great samurai house if you ask me. The ogres? They had set her off balance, so her usually controlled emotions erupted. Horo-sha drew her sword with lightning speed and had the blade up against his throat before he could react. She pressed the blade so hard against his neck that she cut him and blood stained her blade. Never dishonor my family's name again, she threatened. I will not forgive it again. My father was a very great man. You are nothing compared to him, so you have no right to mention my house and defile its memory with your uninformed opinion. Do you understand? The town magistrate had been completely caught off guard, and the young man, he thought was some lowly Ronin, had every right to take his life for what he said. He answered, I do. She shoved him back and continued on her way. Eshi followed after her. They turned a corner, and Eshi finally spoke. I have never seen you so angry except... Horo-sha glanced at him as she interrupted. Except in the vault room where you thought I was going to take your head. He nodded. I was actually angrier with the town magistrate, she confessed. I have never drawn my sword so fast. I guess I've never been this mad before. They walked on a few moments more, and then she said, you should go to Nico and stay with her until this day is done. I will go there now, as she spoke. If there is anything I can do, just let me know. Nothing means more to me than my family. She spoke. I had told you there may come a time when I will need you to protect your wife. I believe that time is nearing. Life lessons from T. Even T can't be trusted. It could disappoint just like others in your life can disappoint you. Chapter 42. A talk. The tiny kitchen. Horo-sha walked in and found Komi hugging the kitchen girl. Musum had been crying again. For a moment, she thought about turning around and coming back later, but the ogre's breath expelled a hot persistence of time. Time she was running out of. Musum, I need to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you, Kaioi. I know, but you have to. Uncle Tadao is dead, and Lady Evening Vanilla killed him. I don't think she did, Horo-sha spoke with certainty. I believe whoever really gave you the perfume bottle used you to set up Nico for another murder. What I don't know is if you have been involved with the mastermind behind this scheme all along, or they just somehow used you in this one instance. What do you think? Musume questioned. Horo-sha stared at her for a long time, and then she replied, I don't know. I would like to think that you were used. I would like to think that you wouldn't purposely help frame someone who is innocent. Lady Evening Vanilla isn't innocent. She is a murderer now as she was a murderer back then. Back then. Are you referring to Kipa and the groom's murders? Musume wouldn't answer her. Komi told the Ronin, maybe you should talk to her later. Give her time to grieve. Grieve. Horo-sha uttered as if it was a sin for the kitchen girl to do so. And then she asked the cook, don't you also find it odd that Musume knows Gaka Tadao? Come back later, Horo-sha. Komi insisted as if the answer to the Ronin's question wasn't important at that moment. She was going to argue, but then Horo-sha decided she could give Musume some time as she interviewed the others. She turned and started back the way she came in when the kitchen girl called after her. Wait, Kaioi. Horo-sha turned and faced her. I know something, Musume proclaimed as she moved out of the cook's consoling embrace. I know you belong to the house of Shakadzuru. How could you have heard already? Were you eavesdropping on the conversation I had in Eshi's office? I figured it out, Musume replied. The red crown crane on your sword and the story of your family's massacre. It wasn't hard to figure it out. Horo-sha grinned as she said, you would make a very good detective. Musume. I only wish I could trust you. Circumstances would have me lean toward being wary of you. You might be in league with the mastermind. Horo-sha, how could you say such a thing? Komi scolded her. She peered at the cook, and then Horo-sha stated, Musume, I have figured out something about you. You only use the given names of people you care about like Komi and Uncle Tadao. You give other names to people you perhaps dislike that have some sort of meaning. I only wish I knew which meaning my name holds for you. Maybe I will tell you later today, the kitchen girl said. Musume's countenance changed from grief to gleaming reprisal as she asked, did the governor change his mind about giving you a week to prove Lady Evening Vanilla's innocence? Why would you ask? You seemed frenzied like there isn't much time, Musume replied with a devious grin. Horo-sha glanced at the clock in the kitchen and saw that it was nearly 1 p.m. She thought about the ogre. The relentless ogre? And then she said, I have until 6 p.m. And then they are going to behead Nico. No, Komi spoke. They can't kill the mistress. I won't let it happen, Horo-sha swore. I will find the mastermind and reveal their scheme to everyone. Soul of desperation. I need to verify my suspicions. I must ask a hard question. The mystery I can't let go of. What will it cost my friend? Chapter 43. Talking to one who knows more. The koi garden. You wanted to see me? Samba inquired as she entered and found the Ronin sitting on one of the benches. I did, Horo-sha answered. She had been gazing at the koi in the pond. We need to have a talk about this, Horo-sha stated as she held up the bamboo knife. Why would someone use this instrument to lure you to the water's edge? I know it is a knife used to cut a baby's umbilical cord. I also know that you used to be a midwife. Tell me, when did Nico have a baby? Samba inquired. How did you know? A few things. As she paid all of Nico's debt, but before she came home with him. I spoke to him a few minutes ago, and he told me that Nico went to her sister's estate before marrying him. He was told that her sister was ill, and Nico was there for about 8 months. Enough time for someone who is already a month pregnant to give birth. I know that I am most likely right because Nico told me herself that she is an only child. Nico did have a baby. What happened to the child? Nico knew Eshi loved her, but she didn't believe that he would accept another man's child into his family. Samba answered. Was the baby a boy? Samba's eyes widened when the Ronin asked the question. I am right then, Horo-sha spoke. I believe Riko discovered that fact when he noticed the earring was a carp streamer. The Ronin stood and said, I believe I have enough before I go and talk to Lady Rai. Horo-sha started out, then paused, and asked, am I missing anything? The bamboo knife. Does it have any other meaning than you were the one who assisted Nico in the delivery? Samba turned her gaze away and answered, there is nothing else. Mystery haiku. Evil schemes. Coven. Pieces falling together. Mastermind. Artist. Chapter 44. A small light shines down on the scheme. The White Daffodil residence. The Ronin detective is here. Lady Rai, one of her guards, spoke. Lady Rai was sitting on a floor pillow and motioned for the guard to let the Ronin in. Horo-sha walked into a small sitting room within the residence. The body of Gaka Tadao had been removed from the larger room. She glanced all around and asked, where is your lady's maid? I wish to speak with you. Lady Rai motioned to a floor pillow directly in front of her. I believe I know who you are, Horo-sha began as she sat. I noticed that you like to stay out of the sun as much as possible, so you have your lady's maid hold an umbrella over you. She paused and then said, "Long ago, a woman frequented this estate and she always carried an umbrella. I believe the sun will be your undoing. You were Eshi's lover from more than 20 years ago and you were most likely Madam's daughter." Lady Rai laughed a muffled laugh for a few moments, and then she stared at the Ronin as if debating telling him something. Horo-sha waited, and when Lady Rai made no effort to communicate with her, she told her, "I usually don't reveal this to anyone. Usually. But I am going to tell you because after I tell you, I am going to remove your veil and see for myself. I am a woman, and I don't want you to be startled as I do touch you." She waited for some sort of response, and when Lady Rai again made no effort to communicate, Horo-sha leaned over and removed her veil. She was horrified by what she saw. Horo-sha expected to see someone around Nico's age, but Lady Rai was much older. Her age nor her appearance was what horrified her. It was the fact that someone had sewn the woman's lips together. Dark black thread stitched her mouth closed. Who would do such a thing? Horo-sha uttered as she removed Snail's tooth from her sash. "Hold still. I will cut the thread and release." Lady Rai put out her hand and placed it on Horo-sha's wrist that held the knife, and then the older woman shook her head as a tear streamed down her cheek. "You cannot want to stay this way," Horo-sha said. "Who would do this to you? Who would want to silence you?" She thought about it and then spoke. "The one who speaks for you. The lady's maid. You are madam and the lady's maid is your daughter." Lady Rai nodded. "I am right then. Your daughter was jealous of Nico when she discovered that the man she had fallen in love with had eyes for another. She must have been planning her revenge for a very long time, maybe even as long as 20 years. What I don't understand is why such an elaborate plan. Why not just kill Nico?" Horo-sha paused and considered what she had learned, and then she demanded, "Tell me what Iga's real name is." Lady Rai turned Horo-sha's hand over and wrote in her palm. She wrote the name Hado. "Your daughter's name is Hado." Lady Rai nodded. "Musum told me that the woman who raised her was named Hado." "Did Hado raise Musum?" Lady Rai nodded again. "Musum would have known Gaka Tadao because he is your husband, but you would have kept it from him that your lady's maid is actually your daughter. It was more likely that while Tadao courted you that Musum was with you and they developed a friendship. Musum saw him as her uncle." Horo-sha paused and then asked, "Why kill Tadao?" Musum acted like it wasn't part of the plan. "Was Tadao killed because he had plans of his own for Sora that might have exposed your plans?" "I keep saying your plans. The scheme must be Hado's. I only need proof. Is there some sort of proof?" "Lady Rai," the lady's maid called out. "Where are you?" Lady Rai quickly put her black veil back on, and then she grabbed a bell next to her and rang it. Higgins entered and saw the Ronin. "I didn't know we had a guest. You should not be in here with my lady by yourself. Ronin, it is not proper. I thought you would be not that far away," Horo-sha said. "I just have one question, and then I'll be on my way. You said that Lady Rai never left yours or the guards' presence. Did you ever leave their presence? Did you maybe sneak back and kill Gaka Tadao?" "Why would I do a thing like that?" Higgins asked. "Higgins, that is an unusual name," Horo-sha stated as she rose to her feet. "I've never heard it before. Did you know if you reverse the name you have Sagi? And we all know what Sagi means." She waited to see if the lady's maid would react, and then Horo-sha said, "Sagi means fraud." Iga's face turned red with rage, and then she yelled, "Guards, I will show myself out," Horo-sha said, and then walked by the guards as they rushed in. She paused at the exit, looked at Lady Rai, and then told Higgins, "I will see you later today." Life lessons from tea. Tea as in questions can be consumed quickly, but the answers as the flavor was what must be savored. Chapter 45. Choosing Sides. The barracks. Horo-sha went in search of the town magistrate and found him and his deputies laughing it up with the few guards that were off duty. They were all sitting around a table eating and drinking. She glared at the guards, who should have been loyal to their household. As she stated, "I see that while Gado is safeguarding your mistress' life, some of you are getting chummy with her executioner." Most of the guards looked ashamed at hearing the Ronin's statement, while a few glared back their contempt for Horo-sha. "Yashiro, I would like to ask you a few questions." The town magistrate inquired, "Are you so desperate that you would question me as if I had something to do with these murders? I don't believe you are the mastermind behind this scheme to frame Gaka Nico, but I do believe you were used," she stated. And then she asked, "Uncle Tadao had mentioned that you would sometimes ride in the carriage and play go with Lady Rai. You would have had quite a bit of time to talk with her lady's maid." "Her lady's maid," he repeated, then thought about the question, and replied, "I did converse with Lady Rai, not her servant." Horo-sha considered his response and then asked, "Who did you play go against? Lady Rai or her lady's maid?" "I did play against her servant," Yashiro admitted. "Let me ask you one final question," Horo-sha stated. "When you agreed to do your part in this scheme, for whatever reason, whether it be for money or favors, who did you believe you were making the deal with?" Lady Rai, who never spoke, or the lady's maid, claiming all that she said came from Lady Rai. Yashiro started to cry out that he had been insulted, but then he considered the Ronin's perspective of things. He would have to rethink everything. Money only lasts so long and a favor is only good until you use it, Horo-sha started as she turned to leave. She spoke over her shoulder. Consider whose favor is more valuable. Lady Rai's, whose husband is now dead. Gaka Tadao made the favors very valuable, but with him dead. Horo-sha paused and then added, Gaka Eshi is very much alive and the Gaka family head. How grateful do you think he would be if you did? Nothing. When the time came. Soul of tea. I find that I can't think. I can't see the painting anymore. Tea is so simple, but this mystery boggles me. Chapter 46. A light in the darkness. The barracks courtyard. Horo-sha headed for. She wasn't sure where she should go next. She left the courtyard and headed for the Red Clover residence. Horo-sha took a side trip and ended up in the vegetable garden. She looked over all the vegetables and then the surrounding area as she sighed a great sigh. Horo-sha said a simple prayer for guidance as the priestess had taught her, and when she opened her eyes, Higgins was there. Horo-sha started to ask her a question, but she couldn't think of any, so she decided to let the lady's maid take the lead. Higgins began with guile thick in her voice. Ronin? Horo-sha. Horo. Yoke. Kaioi. You sure have many names for someone who is not that important. You do have a spy among the household. Musum has been helping you. I had hoped it wasn't true. I have grown fond of her, Horo-sha admitted. I guess I don't need to keep up the pretense when we are alone. Higgins spoke. Yes, Musum is an instrument that I finally honed. She is my... The lady's maid paused and said, Musum told me about the painting in your mind. The one you can't quite see. I will use that analogy and say Musum is my brush. As for fondness, Musum does my bidding, for she is very fond of me. Horo-sha stated, she has spoken very little about her past. It sounded like she had a grim beginning, but then you came into her life. You became a light in the darkness. The lady's maid seemed surprised by the Ronin's statement and insisted, No, I was never a light to her. Higgins paused and then explained, I was a guide into darkness. I was the painter and she the brush, and with her, I stroked every line and detail of the picture. Musum knows you have been killing all of these people and she just stands by and lets you. She did seem very shocked over Gaka Tadao's death. He was not part of your scheme, was he? Tadao did something that made it necessary that you eliminate him. Musum was devastated by his death, Higgins admitted. She must have grown fond of him over the year Lady Rai was married to him. She looked around and asked, Why are you here, Ronin? There is nothing in this garden that will help you, not unless you plan on uprooting a turnip and eating it. I was thinking about Kipa's murder, Horo-sha began. She was here. She must have orchestrated the messages that led the housekeeper to meet with Nico, and vice versa. I still haven't figured out who else is helping you. Horo-sha paused, moving forward through her thoughts, and then stated, Just today, Musum provided the distractions, and as she did, Nico slipped out of the Red Clover residence to confront Gaka Tadao with the perfume bottle. Who else within the household is helping you? Who killed Kipa and the groom? Higgins said nothing, so Horo-sha decided to move things along the track the lady's maid would speak about. We were talking about Gaka Tadao. Yes, the old fool. Higgins spoke. He did dote on Musum. She was not a child, but very childlike. I guess Tadao saw Musum as a grandchild. He had none, you know. He spoke often of having children, but he never sired any of his own. He adopted a male child, and his son has decided not to carry on the line by producing any offspring. Musum became a substitute that I gladly exploited. Gaka Tadao never knew of your plans, did he? He was going blind so he couldn't see what you were doing within his household. Tadao didn't even recognize Musum when she was standing only a few feet from him during my duel with the town magistrate. One of his past sins caught up with him, Higgins told the Ronin. Would this past sin be that Tadao poisoned Eshi's first wife? If he had made a poison from something like the deadly white nightshade, the rarest of the nightshades, and gotten any on him while creating it and never treated himself, small amounts of the poison would have caused his progressive blindness. Musum was right, Higgins spoke. You are very good for a Ronin. I also heard that you come from a once powerful samurai house. It would be a shame if certain individuals discovered that a member of the house of Shakadzuru survived. It would be a shame if they discovered that both daughters of Shakadzuru Haruto survived. Horo-sha instinctively put a hand to the hilt, but her anger quickly subsided, and she moved it away from the sword. She said, Too many no? The tiger is out of the bag. You might be clever, Horo, but you will not be able to save Nico. It is already 2:40 p.m. You only have a little over 3 hours before 6 p.m. Why are you wasting your time in this garden? I am still trying to figure out how you sneaked onto the estate and killed Kipa and then the groom. Higgins questioned. What happened to the theory that someone in the household other than Musume is also helping me? I can't see anyone in the household betraying the Gaka family and murdering 2 people. I have decided it had to be you. I questioned the carriage driver, and he said that Lady Rai insisted that you stay in the town next to this one when you could have easily traveled the last stretch of road in 2 hours. You could have snuck away by horse and come here ahead of the carriage. You killed Kipa and the groom, and you also attacked Samba. Higgins laughed as if the Ronin had no clue, and then she told her, I will not be goaded into confessing. I still don't understand why Musume helps you. It is almost as if your hatred of Nico is her hatred. Higgins laughed again and stated with certainty, no, Musume's hatred of Nico is her own. Horo-sha thought about what she said, and then Horo-sha spoke. You also have another name. Hado. Musume talked about how you cared for her. Musume loves you, but do you love Musume? Higgins said nothing as if the very thought was ludicrous, and then she headed back to the White Daffodil residence, leaving Horo-sha to ponder some more alone in the garden. Chapter 47. A threat. The koi garden. Samba, I thought I might find you here again. Yoke, the house physician spoke as she pulled out of her thoughts. We need to talk, and this time you can't hold anything back. There is a secret you have been keeping from me. A secret that you have kept from Nico. What sort of secret? Nico inquired as she and Gato came into the garden. Horo-sha glanced at the 2 men and said, a secret she will not reveal if there are too many to hear it. Nico turned to her husband and said, please wait outside. Do not come in unless you hear me call your name. Not even if you hear raised voices. As she kissed her on the lips and then went out as Gato followed. What secret have you been keeping from me? Nico inquired of her friend. Samba turned her gaze from her and said, there is no secret. You lie. I can tell, Nico spoke. I can't tell you, Samba insisted. You will hate me. You will hate me and cast me out of the only family I have ever known. Horo-sha said, Samba, you have to. You have to tell me. I believe whatever you are keeping, whatever secret I have not been able to figure out, is very important. Nico will die if you don't tell me. Samba shook her head. I don't have time for this. Nico doesn't have time for this. Horo-sha spoke angrily. She drew her sword and went over and grabbed Nico by the wrist. Tell me, Samba, or I might as well kill Nico. I can at least make sure her death is swift and she feels no pain. I can't say the same for the town magistrate. I can't, Samba insisted as she continued to shake her head. You must, Horo-sha yelled at her. Tell me or I will take Nico's head. No, you wouldn't? I don't believe you would, Samba shouted. Horo-sha yanked Nico by her wrist and caused her to fall to her knees. Horo-sha positioned herself behind her and threatened again. Samba, tell me now. She raised her sword over her head and screamed, I will take her head. Nico knelt trembling before the Ronin, and Samba held out her hand and said, Don't. I will tell you. She rushed over to Nico and placed her body over hers as she said, I'll confess. I will tell you both everything. Please. Don't hurt Nico. Don't hurt her anymore. Violence haiku. Threats. Bodily harm. Blade. Swift action. Posed ready. Harsh repercussion. Chapter 48. Another secret revealed. Horo-sha held on to her anger. She seized it and wouldn't let go, for she knew if she did, she would break down. She had just been very cruel to Samba and even crueler to Nico. They were both her friends, and she treated them like they were her enemies. Tell me what you have kept from Nico, Horo-sha demanded as she sheathed her sword. The secret I am holding onto is about Nico's baby boy. Samba began as she moved and didn't cover her friend anymore. She turned her attention to Nico as she continued. As you know, Eshi paid off your debt, but then you found out you were pregnant, and most likely by someone other than Eshi. Would this other possibility be Akino? The groom? Horo-sha inquired. Samba nodded and continued. I told Eshi. Only because I couldn't lie to him, Nico interrupted. I told Eshi that Nico's sister had fallen ill and she needed to go and take care of her. Samba spoke as she got to her feet and then assisted her friend onto her feet. He offered to help, but I told him Nico's pride would not allow him to interfere in family matters. And he accepted my word. She brushed her mistress' kimono off where dirt had gotten onto it as she said, I told Eshi. Nico would write him every week, and she did. I delivered the messages myself in fear that a messenger would reveal the location of where Nico was staying. Do you remember those final weeks leading up to the birth of your baby? I do, Nico replied. You started to doubt your decision to give up your baby. You knew Eshi would not accept another man's child, so you were going to give away your baby. I did, Nico confessed. I said if I had a boy, I would still give him up. Many families are looking for an heir to adopt. Samba said, you also said if you had a girl, you would keep her? You would tell Eshi about your baby and let fate take over. I did, Nico said as she remembered those days. I wasn't sure if we could find a good home for a girl. I thought, Nico gasped and then she uttered, "Samba, you didn't?" "I did," her friend replied. "I lied to you. You had a baby girl, Nico. I told you that you had a boy. I never let you hold her, and I gave the baby to Kipa. He said he had found a home for her. I paid him 3 silver coins to keep quiet about you." Nico immediately went over to the house physician and slapped her across the face. Samba held her reddening cheek as she had nothing to say in her defense. Nico lifted her hand to slap her again, but then she wrapped her arms around the house physician. "Samba, I forgive you. You did such an unforgivable thing to me, but I forgive you." The house physician started to cry, and Nico cried with her as they both hugged on each other. A few minutes went by, and then Nico dried her own eyes. "And as for you, Yoke," Nico spoke as she went over to Horo and lifted her hand to slap her. "You went too far before. I think you even caused me to bruise my knees." Horo-sha turned her face and closed her eyes. Nico didn't slap her, and when Horo-sha opened her eyes and saw the compassion in Nico's gaze, she fled from the koi garden. Life lessons from swift action. Regret can follow after swift action. It is usually best to carefully consider your actions or sorrow will follow. Soul of tea. I hurt my friend. It is unforgivable. I hurt her and not even tea can console me. Chapter 49. Time is running out. The Red Lotus residence. "I am so glad you are here," Nico spoke as she entered the residence. "I didn't want to traipse all over the estate looking for you." Horo-sha was sitting on the floor pillow with her knees pulled up and her arms wrapped around herself. Nico expected the young woman to be crying the way she ran out of the koi garden, but Horo-sha was very quiet. Yoke, look at me." Horo-sha lifted her gaze. "I also No," Horo-sha shouted. "I went too far, but I would also do it again, so you shouldn't forgive me. I don't have that much time left. I have to prove your innocence, but I don't have a complete picture." Samba was holding back. "I needed to see the section of the painting she was hiding." Nico went over and knelt beside her and wrapped an arm around her. "Yoke, sometimes I have no clue what you are talking about. You did not use tea, so I have no clue." Horo-sha laughed and said, "I am obsessed with tea. Yoke, I forgive you. You treated me harshly in the koi garden. You could have been less physical with me to get your point across, but then again, Samba might not have believed you would have hurt me. No, you shouldn't forgive me. I hurt you. I frightened you just so I could solve the case. Don't lie to me," Nico spoke. "You did this so you could save me. I was just so angry. My rage, my temper got the better of me," Horo-sha admitted. And then she wrapped her arms around Nico and held back sobs that wanted to leak out as she said, "I don't know if I can save you. The scheme was devised well. With more time I could, but time is running out." Nico pulled away from the young woman, put a hand to her cheek, and said, "Yoke, you are the woman I hope my daughter has grown up to be. You are so brave and considerate. Your daughter," Horo-sha began, ... is why this scheme has worked so well. "Your daughter is very close. My daughter is here." "Who is she?" Horo-sha glanced out the open shoji and saw Eshi and Gato waiting outside. "Nico, I need for you to go with your husband and return to the Red Clover residence. I need for you to trust me, and I also need for you to make sure Samba stays with you. It is not safe for either of you anywhere else on the estate. Promise me you will go directly there. I need to know you are safe so that I can do what must be done." "I promise," Nico stated. "I promise to do as you have said." A lie, haiku, and truth, small or big, can bring down a huge mountain. Lying lips still hurt. Chapter 50. Dark Beginnings. The tiny kitchen. Horo-sha rushed through the small courtyard, entered through the front, and asked the cook, "Komi, I need to speak with Musum alone." Komi protectively glanced at the kitchen girl, and Musum nodded. The cook left. "I was very cruel to your mother, not that long ago. I told her I would take her head." Musum asked angrily, "You threatened Hato?" "No, though she should have been the one I threatened. I threatened your birth mother, Lady Evening Vanilla. You are very clever, Kaioi, to make me think about my adopted mother. But Lady Evening Vanilla is no mother to me. Why would I care what you do to her? Why do you hate Nico so much?" Horo-sha inquired. "Why do you hate her so much that you would help Hato in her scheme? Do you know what she did to me?" Musum asked. Horo-sha stated, "She gave you up? I could have forgiven her if she had placed me up for adoption. But my start in this world is much darker." Musum stated with venom dripping from her voice. "Lady Evening Vanilla gave birth to me and then she ordered with woman to drown me." "With woman?" Horo-sha interrupted. "I understand the name. With woman is what the name midwife comes from." Musum continued. With woman took me the moment I was born and dunked me in the bucket of bloody water used during the delivery. With woman thought she had succeeded in drowning me and handed me off to Kipa along with 3 silver coins. Kipa took me deep into the woods and buried me alive. Hado had heard my cries when I was born and secretly followed Kipa into the woods. She unburied me from my shallow grave and managed to save me. I owe my existence to Hado. I would do anything for her. The ghost story, Horo-sha said. The ghost story you told me was your origin story. Musum, Hado lied to you. Nico thought she had a boy and he was going to a wealthy family who wanted an heir. She thought you were going to a family who would care and love you. You are the one who is mistaken. Lady Evening Vanilla lied to you. She didn't want me, and she ordered my death. Lady Evening Vanilla, with wife, the thief, and 80, they all deserved what they got and what is coming to them. Hado is very patient, Horo-sha began. Don't you see? She raised you and brought you up on a lie so that she could use you in her revenge scheme. Hado loves me, Musum spoke as if that was the only truth that mattered. She saved me. Nico did not order Samba to dispose of you. Her wish was that you be adopted by a good family. Kipa never buried you. He only delivered you to Hado. Somehow she found out that Nico was pregnant. She probably also paid Kipa another 3 silver coins for his silence in the matter. You lie? Musum screamed. Does Nico seem like the person to lie about a thing like that, or does Hado seem more like a person to lie about your origins? Horo-sha questioned. And when she didn't answer her, Horo-sha stated, think about this. Musum, Hado has used you since you were a child. If she truly loved you, why did she tell you your birth mother tried to have you killed? Would you have not been much happier if she just told you that you were her child? She could have raised you with no mention of your past, but she didn't. Hado told you over and over how your mother tried to kill you. She honed you into a sharp blade, a paintbrush of destruction that she used against Nico and Eshi. The sad thing is, Hado believes that once Nico is out of the way, Eshi will be hers as she thought he was hers so long ago. You lie, do I? What about Gaka Tadao? Horo-sha questioned. Was he meant to die in this scheme? Who killed him? Nico did. She did not, Horo-sha insisted. She had no motive. Gaka Tadao might not have liked Nico, but she didn't hate him. Gaka Tadao had plans of his own for this family. He wanted to take over as the Gaka family head, and his plans were well on their way for him to attain his goal. You already figured out what Sora was doing. You do refer to him as the gifted weasel. Not that long ago, I saw him gazing at a weasel painting. It must have been the last one he forged and replaced, and either you figured it out or caught him selling off the original. Musum asked, what does gifted weasel have to do with Uncle? Gaka Tadao gave Sora the idea, Horo-sha explained. Sora wanted money. He wanted the things it could buy. Tadao saw a way to dishonor the eldest son who was next in line for the head of the family. The title would fall to Tadao if Sora was disgraced. Hado believed Tadao's plan would get in the way of hers, so she killed him and once again framed Nico. Musum said nothing. Horo-sha glanced at the clock and it was 4:28 p.m. She said, there isn't much time. I am going to confront Hado one last time before it is too late. One way or another, I will make her confess to her scheme and to murdering all those people. Life lessons from tea. Tea is dark brown or as green as life or a multitude of other colors, but it is never clear as pure water. Chapter 51. Opposing Forces. The White Daffodil Residence. All the guards around the residence were gone, and Horo-sha walked right in to find Lady Rai sitting on a floor pillow on a raised platform, and Higgins standing next to her. They were both in the main room and where Gaka Tadao had been killed. Horo-sha saw no signs that a murder had been committed. We have been waiting for you, Higgins. Hado spoke. Are you sure it is we? Horo-sha questioned as the Ogre of Time whispered in her ear just to give up. She couldn't save Nico. Horo-sha ignored the Ogre, pushed forward, and stated, your mother. I will still call her Lady Rai since the only name I do know her by is Madam. She paused to see if Lady Rai would communicate, but she only sat on her floor pillow as if she was a statue. Horo-sha continued, your mother does not seem to wish for Nico's death. My mother wants what I want, Hado confidently stated. Is that why you sewed her lips shut so that you couldn't hear her agree with you and your scheme? Horo-sha questioned. Or was it because you couldn't listen to her counsel that begged you to stop before it was too late? Hado glanced at her mother, who didn't move or react in any way. And then Hado said, do you know about the thread? I do, Horo-sha replied. And then she asked, do you know your mother would not allow me to remove the threads from her lips? I thought at first it was because she was traumatized or feared you. It was neither of those two things. Your mother wants you to release her yourself. I believe whatever pact you made with her long ago has gone too far. Look what you have done to your mother. You have muted her. You took away her words, her ability to speak. Hado seemed to be deaf to the Ronin's words and questioned, is this what you wanted to talk about? Did you not come here for a different reason? I did, she replied, a little trounced that her tactic didn't work on the lady's maid. Horo-sha wouldn't allow herself to wallow in defeat. There wasn't time. So she declared, I want you to confess to the gruesome crimes you committed. 2 of those crimes you accuse me of were committed before I even arrived, Hado stated as fact. You must have been raking your mind trying to figure out how I could have snuck onto the estate without being seen. You might have even convinced yourself I somehow rode here by horse and entered unseen. Horo-sha considered what the lady's maid had said and then went over to the table with the clock. She leaned on it with her back to the others and insisted, You have to be the one who murdered Kippa and the groom. You have not been listening, Ronin, Hado scolded her as if she was her student. And then the lady's maid spoke. Come closer to me. Horo-sha reluctantly moved over to the lady's maid. This was all Hado's game, so she would have to play by her rules for now. The lady's maid whispered, I crafted my revenge. My revenge? She is swift and precise. I forged her until she was a lethal weapon. I let her loose on this household days before I arrived. I cannot be accused of any crime that I was not present to commit. Horo-sha angrily denied what she implied. No, you're the murderer. No one else. Only you. Musum would never hurt anyone. Who has more hatred eating away at them? Hado asked as she laughed at the Ronin's ignorance. Who sees the world from a drowning blanket of bloody water and a suffocating cradle of dirt? Who wants to make those who hurt her hurt even more? She paused, and when the young woman said nothing, Hado continued. The great Ronin detective. Yoke of the house of Shakadzuru. Kaioi, Musum's friend. Or are you her enemy? Are you a hunter that was ensnared by their prey? I don't need to lie to you. Ask her yourself. Hado pointed and said, I believe by now she is waiting just outside the residence. Horo-sha was so angry, but she was more afraid that Hado was speaking the truth. She still denied it within her heart. Musum. Her friend couldn't have. She wouldn't have hurt anyone. Hurry, Horo. See if you can get a confession out of her. See if she will admit it to the town magistrate. Hado glanced at the clock on one of the tables. It is almost 5 o'clock. Soul of heartbreak. I will not believe it. No, it is a lie. My heart cannot take it. The truth cannot be the truth. Chapter 52. What was ignored? The White Daffodil Residence's courtyard. The second ogre, the one of reprisal and quick retribution, started to laugh at Horo-sha as she fled the truth. She wanted to run all the way to her sister's town. She wanted Sekura to wrap her arms around her like she did when they were younger and ogres were only in her imagination and not manifestations of her fears and worries. Horo-sha couldn't accept that Hado might be telling her the truth about Musum. She quickly put her shoes on in the entryway and rushed outside. Horo-sha wanted to flee the estate, but instead, she found Musum where Hado had said. She was standing just outside in the courtyard as if waiting on her. Kaioi, do you now know? Tell me it's a lie and I'll believe you. Horo-sha pleaded in desperation. Musum sighed and said, I told Hado not to tell you. I wanted to be the one to tell you. A big smile spread across her face as the kitchen girl said, I fooled you, didn't I? All of this time you never had a clue what I did. I did everything right under your nose. Right under everyone's noses. No one ever noticed a kitchen girl holding an empty basket going about her duties. It was too easy. Musum laughed as she added, You even wanted me to help you solve the murders. You thought I was very clever, but I was more clever than you thought. Horo-sha peered at her as if she was some demon. I was so worried when the samurai detective didn't show up. I thought I would have to put in all of this effort to trick everyone for nothing. I thought no lowly Ronin would even catch on to the clues I was leaving. But you followed them. What did you tell me? The mastermind was painting a picture. Do you see the completed work now? Do you? Kaioi, Horo-sha's heart shattered, and she said, The ghost story you told me. You are the vengeful ghost, the bloodthirsty specter. You do see now. Good. It makes the next steps easier. Horo-sha considered the ghost story Musum had told her and the origin story that the kitchen girl believed happened to her. She thought about the first death. How the head guard had been buried alive. A new fear seized her. A fear that only confirmed with no doubt what Horo-sha had overlooked or had purposely ignored. She hadn't seen the truth, not until now. She accused the kitchen girl. You killed them. You knocked Kippa over the head and buried him alive as you believed he had done to you. You tried to drown Samba as you believed she drowned you. What about the groom? You mean the man who left a deposit with Lady Evening Vanilla and I was what came of it? Hey, Aquino, I also knocked him over the head while he was writing. I dragged his body into the tackle room and tied him up. I heartlessly ran him through as he had run through Lady Evening Vanilla with his lust. He was as much to blame for my existence as, the more evil deeds Musum confessed to, the more ill Horo-sha became. She waited for Musum to finish describing the deed she had committed, and when Musum paused, as if she feared speaking someone's true name would give the owner power, Horo-sha urged her to continue. You can say her name. It won't hurt you to say her name. Say your birth mother's true name, Nico. The illness Musum's confession brought morphed into heartache, and Horo-sha didn't think she could bear it. The kitchen girl was her friend. She seemed to enjoy her life with the Gaka household. So how could Musum do this to them? What hadn't she seen? What had she overlooked, or maybe ignored would be a better word? Had friendship blinded her? She never imagined Musum could do any of those atrocious crimes. A whirlwind of doubt and heartbreak spun around in her mind, and Horo-sha was being sucked into the center of this emotional vortex. She had to distance herself from her feelings, or they would overwhelm her and paralyze her. What now? Horo-sha asked once she thought she tamed her emotions. You talked about a painting that only you could see, Musum began. Kaioi, you were wrong. I can also see it. I am the painter, so I can see the strokes even before I brush them. You are wrong, Musum, Horo-sha stated with confidence as a single tear streaked down her cheek. You are not the painter, you are not the mastermind. You are only the brush. You can only create what the painter wills you to paint. You can see the painting, but only as you apply color to the paper. You will never see the complete image, not until the final stroke has been swiped. I too can see, Musum started to argue, and then she saw something that shocked her. The younger girl's lip trembled, and then the most frightfully auspicious thing happened. The great Ronin detective, Kaioi, the menace and only threat to this plan, started crying. Not a single tear or two, but large sorrow-filled droplets streaked down her face. Musum was mortified. She had broken the Ronin so easily. Tears ran down Horo-sha's face. She broke one of her own rules. She was never to cry again. Horo-sha had shed too many tears over her family and the massacre. She promised herself never to cry over anything again. Why are you crying? Musum questioned, as if she would break down and join her. Is this how you react when you lose? Have you never lost before? I am not crying because you were able to fool me. I'm crying because you killed Kipa and Akino. You killed them in such cruel and painful ways. You, Musum, you did this. Did you also kill the guard who was watching the south gate so you could kill the groom with no interruptions? No, I just paid him to leave. It was easier and less messy. Horo-sha screamed. I thought I knew you. I thought I knew the person you were. I am crying because the Musum I know is dead. Maybe she was never alive. Maybe she was always a lie. But in my eyes, you murdered her. You murdered my friend, and I can never get her back. Musum felt Kaioi, felt Yoke's grief and sorrow as if she had murdered a third person. Tears watered her own eyes. She had only pretended to be Yoke's friend, but in truth, she had lied to herself. The peculiar, tea-obsessed, odd-talking younger girl had befriended her, and some small part of Musum's heart grabbed onto that friendship. She forced herself to sever the small tie, break any connection she had with the Ronin. She had Hado, Lady Rai, and Uncle. Musum paused in her thoughts and then corrected them. Hado and Lady Rai were all she needed. I can't undo what I have done, Musum spoke as if she had to explain the fact. As if she was able, she would undo them. You must accept that we are no longer friends. Actually, you should realize by now that we were never friends. You were only a small stone on the go board. You were placed on the board and your function is over. This is not a game, Horo-sha yelled. Kipa and Akino are dead. Nico, your mother, she will be killed because of what you did. I am what I am, Musum said as she narrowed her eyes, suspicious of the knowledge the Ronin had gained while talking to Hado. Horo-sha insisted, you are what Hado made you. She lied to you about your origins. It is true that Nico gave you up, but the rest of what you were told, it was all a lie. Say what you want, Kaioi. I will not believe you. You would say anything to save Nico. I would if a lie could save her, but I believe only the truth will save her now. Horo-sha paused as the barracks courtyard clock chimed the 5 o'clock hour. She moved closer to the kitchen girl and begged her, it is closing in on 6 p.m. Confess to what you have done. Confess so that I may save Nico. Hado did very well if the great Ronin detective has nothing on her or me to convict us. I will give you nothing. You cannot use my words, for no one else heard them. Run along, Kaioi. Run along. You only have an hour to spend with your precious friend. Musum spoke and was about to goad the Ronin some more when an unexpected thing happened. Horo-sha turned tail like some frightened tiger and ran away just as the kitchen girl had told her to do. She ran and ran as her mind raced after a way to save Nico. Ogre of time haiku. Stomping ever forth. Devouring seconds. Minutes. Giant clock monster. Chapter 53. Despair and desperation. The barracks courtyard. Horo-sha continued running until she came across the clock on the post. There were no guards within the courtyard and there were no guards within the barracks. They had all decided on a side. Most were loyal to Eshi and Nico, but a few deserted and joined the town magistrate's ranks with promises of becoming deputies with a pay raise and a bonus once Gaka Nico was dead. A harsh wind whipped through her traditional Japanese trousers as she stared up at the clock that not that long ago had chimed that only an hour remained before 6 p.m. She drew her sword as the clock and pose took on the image of the Ogre of Time. Minutes and seconds had been her enemy the moment she stepped onto the Gaka Estate. The Ogre of Time devoured hope. Horo-sha decided she would chop down the post and end the ogre's reign, but she knew that destroying one clock, destroying all the clocks in the world, would not stop the ogre from moving rapidly forward. Time had defeated her. Time removed any chance she had at a proper investigation. The Ogre of Time had won. Hato's scheme, her hatred of Nico and her love and time. Maybe she still had a chance to save Nico. Horo-sha would use the ogre and make him her weapon, but she had to be careful. The ogre could gobble her up. She sheathed her sword. She would need both hands for what was required next. Life lessons from tea. As with most things, tea takes time. From waiting for the leaves to mature, harvest, converting it into dried tea leaves, and finally waiting on it to brew in a pot. Time dictates many things. Chapter 54. One last desperate try. The White Daffodil Residence's courtyard. After a quick visit to the Red Clover residence, Horo-sha raced back to face Hato and paused just outside where the final showdown would take place. While she had been at Samba's place, Yashiro and his deputies along with the 2 deserters from the Gaka Guard surrounded the Red Clover residence. They would not let Nico escape. When the time came, Yashiro would drag Nico out and then he would behead her. Horo-sha slowly entered the White Daffodil residence, and on the raised platform, she found Lady Rai still sitting on her floor pillow and Hato standing beside her as if they hadn't moved the entire time she was gone. "Where's Musum?" "I am here, Kaioi," the kitchen girl replied as she walked in. She glanced at the clock on the table and asked, "Do you still believe you can save Lady Evening Vanilla? I thought you would stay by her side the last 15 minutes of her life." "I believe I can still save her," Horo-sha replied, turned her attention to the lady's maid, and asked, "Where are your guards? I thought you would have called them back to protect you." "I have no fear of you, Hato began. "You won't hurt me just because I won't confess. I sent our guards to assist Yashiro when he needs to storm the residence and take Nico by force. Yashiro called in 10 more deputies and now outnumbers those protecting Nico. She will die in." Hato glanced at the clock and said, "A little over 10 minutes. Horo-sha wanted to shift the game to her rules, so she began with a simple question. "Hato is not your real name either, is it?" "No, it is the name Eshi gave me. I am his dove, his turtle dove. The first days that we were together, making love when we felt like it, we were inseparable. He even painted me, showered me with gifts. Our love story would have been uninterrupted if that vixen had not entered our lives. She will regret ever taking Eshi away from me, Nico." Hato continued to talk, but Horo-sha pulled into her thoughts. She had to find a way to save her friend. She had only minutes left before the clock struck again. Horo-sha searched what she knew. She re-examined every clue in her mind. The clock on the table struck 6 p.m. and the barracks courtyard clock chimed a second later. Horo-sha had wasted what little time she had left. She would not be able to save Nico. "Your time is up, Ronin," Hato declared. "Nico will be executed shortly. Confess to your crimes," Horo-sha yelled at her. "It is too late to save Nico, but I must know. I must hear it from your lips. Didn't you plan all of this to punish Nico and have someone else kill her?" Hato started to speak, but Musum spoke before she could and asked, "What if Kaioi altered the clocks and set them back?" Hato smiled and said, "You are so clever, my daughter." She removed a pocket watch that was hidden in her kimono and looked at it and said, "Somehow the Ronin did change the clock on the table. Perhaps when she went and leaned on it with her back to us. She must have also altered the one in the barracks courtyard. I bet that was a sight to see. You climbing up the clock post, or did you find a ladder?" "No matter." Hato looked at the time again and said, "It is only 5:43 p.m. You placed your stone, hoping to take most of the territory. But you lost, Ronin. Soon Nico will lose her head, and I will take the whole board." Horo-sha said nothing. She had hoped the ploy would work. It was a long shot. Everything depended on them relying on the clock in the residence. Horo-sha didn't know Hato had her own pocket watch. She would not save Nico. "Musum, did you arrange what I had requested of you?" Hato questioned. "Yes, it is in the other room," the kitchen girl replied, and then raced into the connecting room and came out with a tray. A teapot and 4 cups were on the tray. Musum quickly set it all out on the table and poured everyone a cup of tea that had already been brewing. "It is ready." Hato made her way to the table, and Lady Rai joined her, and then Hato motioned to a chair and said, "Come sit. Ronin, I hear that you are obsessed with drinking." Horo-sha glanced behind as if looking at the Red Clover residence that was on the other side of the estate. She thought she had gained 20 minutes, but her ruse was discovered. She turned back around and said, "I don't think I'll be joining you for tea." Horo-sha turned her attention to the kitchen girl and said, "Tea should be shared with family, friends, and those you want to get to know better. I don't need to learn any more about you, Hado. I think I know everything I need to know." Musume, Hado began as she looked over the table. "I don't see any honey. Be a dear and go get some." The kitchen girl rushed for the tiny kitchen and ran past Horo-sha. She waited a few moments to make sure Musume was out of earshot, and then Horo-sha moved closer to the table. "Did you know?" Hado asked. "Know what, Ronin?" "That Musume is Eshi's daughter," Horo-sha replied. Hado smiled, pleased she had been up against an observant opponent, and then she replied, "When she was a toddler, I saw him in her." Horo-sha questioned, "When you had keep a lie and tell Nico and Samba that he was taking the child to a family, did you know back then that you would use Musume to kill her own mother?" "It is not as you said," Hado answered. "Yes, I paid off Kipa, but I didn't know Nico was pregnant until I saw him one night with a baby in his arms. I loosened his lips with silver, and he eventually told me everything. I offered him 2 extra pieces of silver for the baby than he would have received from the wealthy family. Kipa returned the wealthy family's money and told them the child had died." Hado motioned to the chair again and said, "You should really sit down with us and have some tea." She removed her pocket watch and said, "It's 6:05. Yashiro would have stormed the residence and should be dragging Nico out." Horo-sha turned to race back to the Red Clover residence. "Do you want to see Nico beheaded?" Hado called after her. "I thought about going to the execution, but those things can get quite gruesome." Hado had beat her. She could not save Nico. All she could do was sit, so Horo-sha went over to the table, pulled out a chair, and slumped down in it. "We have one, Mother," Hado said as she turned and removed Lady Rai's veil. She placed a reed into her thread-closed mouth so that she too could enjoy the tea. Hado picked up a cup and blew on it until it cooled enough to drink, and then she set it in front of her mother. Lady Rai picked up the cup and enjoyed some of the brew. Horo-sha sat there defeated. It was well past 6 p.m. Time. The ogre had soul of ache. "I have failed, my friend. I cannot save her. I cannot do anything for her. My soul aches." Chapter 55. What can't be undone. Several minutes later, Eshi appeared in the doorway of the White Daffodil residence as the last rays of the day started to dwindle slowly away. He was angry. He was mortified. His hands were stained with blood. "Nico is dead," Eshi blurted as he took a few steps in. He didn't even bother to remove his sandals as he asked, "Did you hear me? Ronin, Nico is dead. I held her headless body in my arms, and now I have come to make you pay." Tears streamed down his face, but the Ronin couldn't look at him. She couldn't bear to see him. She could not save her friend. She had failed. As she spoke through his tears, "Nico is dead and your family name has been dishonored. No more will the house of Shakadzuri be uttered without contempt and disgrace following. Someone give me a sword. I will make the Ronin pay." Horo-sha remained in her chair. She didn't even turn to him. She couldn't face him, not when she had failed Nico. "Eshi," Hado blurted as she stood. "Who are you to speak to me in such a matter?" He questioned the lady's maid. "It is me," Hado said as if no one else existed in the room. She spoke to him as if she was his cherished lover who had returned from a long journey. He was enraged with the Ronin and told the lady's maid, "I do not know you, woman." Hado repeated, "It is me, your love. Your turtle dove?" "Hado," Eshi spoke as he took another step as if his foot weighed 100 pounds. He looked at the woman who was standing and asked, "Is it actually you?" "It is, my love." He asked, "Why are you here?" "I have freed you from your prison. We can be together," Hado spoke, barely containing her excitement. "We can live the life we were meant to live." "I don't understand, Hado," Eshi stated as twilight approached. "What did you do?" She coyly turned her head from him as she said, "I should not tell you." "You must," Eshi demanded. "I came as we had talked about so long ago," Hado began. "I came and I am here. We can now be together as you had promised." "Promised?" Eshi spoke the word as if it had no meaning for him. "My wife is dead. How can you talk of such things?" "Talk of such things," she repeated with a little anger. "Do you not remember our plans so long ago?" Eshi thought back to those days and said, "I remember after my first wife's death you would come over and I would drink away my sorrow. We did this for several weeks and then you mentioned the business your mother ran. I visited it and I never complained that you had fun with other women," Hado interrupted him. "We were destined to be together, you and I," he admitted with sorrow, not for her but for his wife who he had lost not that long ago. "Hado, I don't remember the plans you mentioned. What do you believe I promised you?" "You promised that I could be your concubine," she answered as if he should know. I did not have the wealth or status to be your wife, but you promised you would make me your concubine. Horo paused, and when he didn't say anything, she repeated, you were going to marry me, and I was going to give you many sons. Her demeanor changed to one possessed. And she spoke, but then Nico seduced you. She whispered in your ear while you lay next to her in her bed. She took you away from me. You hated Nico, he said. I did. Did you plan this whole thing? As she asked. I did. I carefully set the board, laid each stone in place, and sacrificed many of them so that I could win. Why keep as she asked, as if his once head guard still mattered to him. Did your plan include him stealing the staring feline? No, Kipa came up with that plan all on his own with the help of a certain merchant. Horo spoke as her heart pounded in her chest. All her hard work, all the years she devoted to her scheme, they had paid off, as she would soon be hers. She told him Kipa had to go. I had to eliminate him. He would remember my face, and I couldn't hide behind a veil. What about the old groom in Aquino, who was hired to take his place? The old groom did have to go. I needed Aquino on the estate for his own role, so I paid him to get rid of the old groom. I am not sure how he did it. We will never know. Aquino was one of my more important pieces. He thought we were going to work together and blackmail Nico. He thought he was only here to threaten her into giving us some gold. The fool. He received his reward in the end. As she spoke, as he understood more of what she did, you killed both of them, but not by your own hands. I needed an instrument, a fierce force to enact my moves across the board, and I couldn't be everywhere. I needed someone with as much hatred of Nico as I had. As she knew who she meant and said, the kitchen girl. Musum. Yes, what a more fitting weapon than Nico's own daughter. Horo spoke and then thought about the early years as she stated. I nursed her on resentment, and then I weaned her toward aversion until I could spoon-feed her hatred. She gobbled up every bite. Why did you tell the kitchen girl her mother tried to kill her? As she questioned. Why did you tell her that Samba tried to drown her and then Kipa buried her alive? How do you know these things? Horo inquired as she glanced at the silent Ronin. Kaiwi must have told you. I guess I can't deny it now. I did this for us. She paused and stated as a type of craziness set in. I had started to formulate my plan. I told her those things so that when the time came for her to kill them, Musum would do so with no hesitation. What about Nico? What about my dead sweet Nico? He asked. What did you tell Musum about her so that when the time came, she would let her mother die for a crime she didn't commit? I told Musum the name Nico gave her, Horo replied. I just had to get Musum close to Nico for my plan to work. It wasn't until later that I discovered that Samba had lied to Nico and told her a boy had been born to her. It couldn't be more than perfect. Nico wouldn't even know her own flesh and bone was working in her household. He asked, what name did you tell Musum was the one Nico gave her? I told her she named her Kakai, her little regret. You did this all for me. I did, Eshi. I did all of this for the both of us. Others must have helped you, he spoke. The town magistrate. He is a little power hungry. We will have to watch out for him. I convinced him over our games of Go in the carriage to assist and well. See the clues I left as indicators of Nico's death. What about my uncle? Eshi asked. Musum didn't kill him. No, she loved him even with all his flaws. Gaka Tadao did treat her more like a grandchild than a child of a servant. He was going to ruin my plans. He wanted to take away what you planned on giving to your eldest son. Tadao would have disgraced your family by telling everyone that Sora was forging your family's paintings and selling the originals. Tadao's plans would have ruined my plans, so I killed him. I took the Lotus Frog clan knife that I have cherished all of these years since we have been apart, and I enacted justice for you. You killed Uncle? Musum spoke as she returned from the tiny kitchen. You are the one who killed Uncle. Truth revealed haiku. Speaking words. Sounds. Speech. Lie upon lie. Truth. Hard. Sad. Truth. Sorrow follows. Chapter 56. When the truth is heard, Musum felt as if Hado, the one who was supposed to love her, had drowned her with lies and then buried her alive with the truth. Mounds of truth had been laid out before her, and they were suffocating her. She had always aimed her hatred at Lady Evening Vanilla. You are the one who killed Uncle? Musum questioned as she returned from the tiny kitchen, holding the honey in one hand. How long have you been listening? Hado asked her. Since you called me an instrument. Is that all I am to you? Musum asked. And what about what Kaiwi said? Did you lie to me? Did you lie when you said that Nico wanted me dead, that Samba tried to drown me, and Kipa buried me alive? Musum, I would never. Don't lie to me. I told you what you needed to hear, Hado explained. I told you. The hatred she had aimed at Lady Evening Vanilla turned on the one she loved more than anyone. Musum removed a dagger that was hidden in her kimono's sleeve and went after Hado to kill her. The Ronin, who had been very quiet, quickly moved and blocked Musum's attack with her sword. "Move, Kyoe. Let me kill her," Musum screamed. "I can't allow you to kill her, Musum. You have enough blood on your hands." Horo-sha disarmed Musum by hitting her hand with the hilt of her sword. The kitchen girl took a few steps back as she rubbed her bruised hand. Out of the corner of her eye, Horo-sha detected movement, and by the time she turned around, Lady Rai had picked up Musum's knife and drove it into her daughter's back. Hado collapsed into her mother's arms, and Lady Rai positioned her so that her daughter could look into her face. "Why did you do this?" Hado questioned Lady Rai. "Mama?" Musum yelled and rushed to their side. Hado put a hand to Lady Rai's face and peered at her handiwork that wove around her lips. It wasn't until that moment she laid there dying, that Hado regretted what she had done to her mother. "You had your doubts at the last," Hado spoke to Lady Rai. "I believe you had your doubts about this plan all along. But you still went along. You still stayed by my side. You didn't dislike Nico when she worked for you. I think you even liked her as an employee, but you hated her when I hated her. I had even heard you hit her one day after I told you through my tears that she stole Eshi from me." Hado felt the life seeping away from her as she questioned, "Why did you stay by my side all of this time if you were only going to kill me?" Lady Rai picked up the blood-stained knife and cut the threads that had sewn her mouth shut. Some of her daughter's blood painted her lips. Her voice was raspy and her throat dry, but she managed to answer, "You are my daughter, and I love you. I wanted what was best for you, but you wanted Nico dead. I tried to balance love and my duty to you as a parent. I failed as a parent. I spoiled you too much. I should have stopped you sooner when Eshi chose Nico over you. You had gone too far with Tadao. I actually loved him. I thought once you had Eshi, I could spend the rest of my life with Tadao." "Mother, I'm sorry," Hado said as a tear streamed down her cheek. "I was a horrible daughter." She realized she didn't have much time left, so Hado called out as if she couldn't feel the girl next to her. "Musum. Musum." "I am here," the kitchen girl said. "I might have taken you to raise you like a sharpened blade, but you brought joy to my life," Hado told her as she seized the girl's hand and squeezed it out of desperation and pain. "You made my sorrow bearable, and I did love you." She struggled to hold on to this world as she said, "Of all the things I have told you, this one thing is true, and this one thing will always be true. I love you." Hado died, and Musum cried. The room filled with her wails as a monster mourned a monster. The Ogre of Time moved forward again. Lady Rai turned to the man, who the revenge plot encircled and also cost him someone dear, and she said, "Eshi, I am sorry my failure as a parent cost you Nico, and cost those other men their lives. I could never deprive my daughter of anything, including vengeance. You can take my life. It will not bring your wife back, but maybe it will lessen the punishment against Musum. She is family, the only family I have left. Please take my life and spare hers." Life lessons from T. Even T does not always have a lesson. Chapter 57. All that is left is the execution. Horo-sha wanted to prevent another killing, but she had failed. She felt Musum's anguish as she mourned over Hado. Horo-sha understood what it was like to lose a parent. She moved over to Lady Rai and Musum and then peered outside. She told Lady Rai, "Eshi has no need to take revenge against you or Musum." "Why is that?" Lady Rai questioned. "The sun has just set. Nico's execution would have been at sunset." Lady Rai thought about what she had said, and then Lady Rai told her, "You are a clever one, Ronin?" Musum's face was wet with tears as she asked, "What does she mean?" Horo-sha explained, "I told you once that I would lie if a lie would save Nico. I wanted the truth to save her, but the truth was slow to come to light. I lied to buy the truth more time." "Explain what you mean, Kyoe," Musum demanded. Horo-sha glanced at the clock on the table and then admitted, "I had you focus on 6 p.m. as if it was the deadline, but sunset was the true deadline. I was also afraid that Hado would expect me to come up with some sort of plan to save Nico, so I offered her one. I changed the clock in here and the clock in the barracks courtyard." The Ronin shouted, "You can come out." Sora and Itsuki came into the room through a fake wall. Governor Manzo, 2 of his guards, Nico, and Gato were with them. They all walked through the courtesan wall. "Hado never had a chance against you, Ronin," Lady Rai stated as she saw the crowd. "I assume everyone heard Hado confess to the crimes that I, Musum, and she had rolls in." Nico stared at Musum with this confused, angry look only a mama bear could give. The kitchen girl was a little afraid of her now that Nico knew her identity. Musum turned her gaze away from her and focused on the only mother she had known. Lady Rai turned to the Ronin as Musum continued to cry, and Lady Rai said, "I deserve whatever punishment is coming my way, but have pity on the child. She only saw the world as my daughter painted it for her. My job was to solve the crime," Horo-sha told her. "Others will dish out punishment." Horo-sha walked over to Eshi and told him as mixed emotions ravaged her heart and mind. You did it when I could not." The time came and you protected your wife. I could not save her, but you did. You and your performance. He nodded, not knowing what to say. She stood there and wouldn't allow herself to cry. Horo-sha had only minutes before sat there defeated. The Ogre of Time had been her foe, but the Ogre had fought for her side for once. With a little change in words from sunset to 6 p.m., Horo-sha had bought some time, but she had still used a lie. The lie made her victory hollow. Horo-sha hated lies and what they could do to people. She looked on as Musum, when she thought was her friend, cried on the bosom of her dead mother. Hado had been a woman full of malice and revenge, but she was also a woman who had found a place in her heart for her rival's daughter. Horo-sha's action stripped a mother from her daughter. Hado had brought this on herself with her revenge scheme, but Horo-sha had hastened and encouraged the end results. She looked at Eshi, then to Nico, and then to both Sora and Itsuki. She had solved the case, a case that had taken everything she had, and a case that took from her equally. Horo-sha walked out of the residence. She had to rest and collect her thoughts. Soul of tea. Tea can become bitter. Tea has become bitter as my soul. Chapter 58. Rest within a storm. The next day, the Red Lotus residence. No one bothered the Ronin. No one even walked by the grounds near the residence. Horo-sha laid on her futon and stared up at the ceiling. Night had come and gone, but she found sleep elusive. She got up at dawn and fixed herself some old tea from the day before. It had gone bitter, but no more bitter than her own thoughts about the case. She thought of Musum and Lady Rai, about their crimes and how they cost them both Hado. Hado's revenge cost Hado her life and the time she could have spent with her family. Her life. Horo-sha stood straight up, spilling her tea. She put her sandals on and ran to the Red Clover residence. Their lives. Musum and Lady Rai. Nico was facing a swift beheading. Would they do the same to Lady Rai and Musum? Would justice be swift and she would never see her friend again? No one was at the Red Clover residence. Horo-sha thought about racing to the White Daffodil residence, but decided against doing so. She raced to the back entrance of the manor, and by the time she removed her sandals at the Jenkin, the housekeeper appeared at the entranceway. Where are they? Horo-sha inquired in a panic. Who do you refer to? Emery inquired. Do you speak of Mistress Nico or Master Eshi? Horo-sha thought about it and realized she was more worried about Musum and Lady Rai than the family who hired her. She finally answered, Nico and Eshi. Follow me, Emery said. The housekeeper led her to the shoin and announced the Ronin. Emery slid the shoji to the side when beckoned, and Horo-sha rushed in. Eshi and Nico sat at their usual spot within the large room, but it wasn't as empty as the time when she first met the family. Governor Manzo and a man Horo-sha had never seen before were seated on the left side of the room. Several of the governor's guards were positioned behind him along the wall. Sora and Itsuki sat on their father's right, facing the governor. Speaking of the Ronin detective, Governor Manzo began and then motioned to her as he said, Here he is. The governor paused and then introduced the man next to him. Horo-sha. This is Agano. He will be replacing Yashiro as the town magistrate. By the discretion of the region magistrate, Yashiro has been reassigned. Reassigned? She questioned. Yashiro has friends in high places, so I was unable to completely remove him. He will no longer bother the Gaka family, Governor Manzo spoke, and then he turned and addressed Eshi. We should be going. I have a town to run, and Agano has much to do to transition into his new office. Everyone said their goodbyes, and then Horo-sha was alone with the Gaka family. Horo-sha, Eshi began. I wanted to thank you. Where's Musum? She interrupted. He glanced at Nico and then inquired of the Ronin. You have not heard. Her heart sank, fearing the worst as she repeated, trying not to cry. Where is she? Nico spoke up and said, maybe this conversation would be best talked about with just me and Horo-sha. Eshi nodded and reached over and squeezed his wife's hand, and then he and his 2 sons left. Punishment haiku. Justice swift. Sentence. Heads roll. Screams. Silence. Crying. Punishment. Quick pain. Chapter 59. The punishment. The manor. The shoin. No one else was in the room but Nico and Horo-sha, and to Horo-sha, it felt so empty, as if a great gorge had sprung up between her and the older woman. She was about to ask her again, but Nico spoke first. What do you think should have happened to the kitchen girl? Should have? Horo-sha repeated. She felt ill as she had felt when she discovered Musum had killed both of those men. Horo-sha could barely bring herself to ask, are you saying whatever punishment Musum and Lady Rai should have received has already been served to them? Yes, they have received their punishment. Nico finished when the Ronin couldn't. Horo-sha wanted to cry, but she forced herself to ignore her feelings that wanted to escape as badly as she wanted to escape the conversation. She didn't want to know, but she also had to know. Horo-sha asked, what happened to them? Nico was silent a few moments as she gauged Yoke's emotions, And then Nico said, "What should have happened to the mother and child of the woman who framed me and nearly succeeded in taking my life? What should have happened to the girl who nearly killed Samba? They are dead." Horo-sha spoke as she nearly allowed a sob to break free. "What would you have done differently, Horo?" I don't know. I would have found a way to." Horo-sha spoke as a tear streaked down her cheek as she couldn't bring herself to say any more. She wiped it quickly away. "What kind of woman do you think that I am? Yoke, you are. A wife that dearly loves her husband, and you are a mother of 2 sons. A mother who had to hide in the shadows. You are kind and you are very protective of your family and friends." Nico questioned, "What would I do to safeguard those I love?" Whatever it took. It took everything within Horo-sha not to cry for the friend she had lost. She turned to leave. Horo-sha needed to find some quiet place to mourn for her friend. She might even need to leave the Gaka Estate to find such a place. Nico found that she had been cruel to one who had endured much to save her. So she said, "Musum is my daughter? So I asked Deshi to make a deal with the governor. Both Musum and Lady Rai are under house arrest and may never leave the Gaka Estate." "They are both alive?" Horo-sha uttered as if she didn't believe her. "They are." Relief poured over Horo-sha. Her friend wasn't dead and no one else had died because of Hato's plan. A punishment had been dealt. A light one, but one that made her happy. The mastermind scheme would take no more lives. Life lessons from happiness. Happiness can take you to great heights and leave you floating on air. Chapter 60. Not the grooms. Happiness. Horo-sha thought she wouldn't ever feel happy again. But she did. Her friend had been shown mercy. Part of the burden of failing so much during this case lifted from her shoulders, and Horo-sha let out a great sigh as she wiped her eyes dry. "I should tell you something," Horo-sha began as she still had news that might bring a smile to Nico's face. "Eshi is Musum's father, not Akino." Nico peered at her shocked and asked, "How could you know?" "Akino had exclusive rights to me, and Eshi had not even started coming for the time I would have gotten pregnant. In the world of science, there is this new study called genetics that looks into inherited traits." Horo-sha spoke all excited about the brand new field. "It is a visual study, so both the parents and the child are needed for the research. It is believed." Nico peered at her as if she had 4 eyes, so Horo-sha said instead, "Musum's dimples. Akino had no dimples and Eshi does. There are more things. I see both you and Eshi in her other facial features, and Musum also has Eshi family's gift for art. As for the time frame, did you deliver Musum later than you should have?" "I did. I was afraid when the time came for me to deliver and I never did. It wasn't until 3 weeks later. I thought about having her induce labor, but Samba insisted it would be fine. And then she assured me when the baby came that the baby was healthy. Have you forgiven Samba for lying to you?" Nico thought about how she would answer, and then she said, "My husband explained to me that an apt mind once told him, people who wrong us sometimes have reasons for wronging us, a reason for the misdeed. I somewhat understand why Samba lied and said I had a boy. It will just take me a little more time to completely understand her reasoning. So for the most part, yes, I have forgiven her, but resentment still clings to my heart. I still have a ways to go before I can completely forgive her." Horo-sha had labored all night over her worries and regrets, but at that very moment, she was happy. Nico was alive and Musum was alive. Her happiness didn't last long. Hato's hatred of Nico had been ingrained in Musum. What if she decided later to take her revenge on Nico? Or what if the mastermind scheme was still on track? "You must remain wary of Musum and Lady Rai," Horo-sha warned her friend. "Musum still might try to." Silence. Nico ordered, "You are never to suggest a thing like that ever again. Musum is my daughter." She felt a sting when her friend snapped at her. Nico had yelled at her before, but this shout, this declaration to be obeyed, felt different. Horo-sha considered her next words and said, "What you are doing is unwise. Musum killed 2 men and nearly killed Samba. She can't be trusted not to finish what Hato started. I know Musum's misdeeds. Should I forgive them or should I punish them?" She didn't know how to answer Nico. "Yoke." Nico spoke, and then she said one of her other names as if removing her given name from her vocabulary, as if removing the fondness she once had for her. "Horo, you might be protective of me as if I was your mother, but I am not. Musum is my daughter. You are. You are Horo-sha. And you are to me." Again she felt as if Nico removed another layer of their relationship and threw it away. Nico no longer saw her as Yoke, a daughter she could have had, and she didn't see her as clever as Horo. No, Nico now saw her as Horo-sha the Wanderer, one who was alone in this world, one who had no place in the Gaka family. She felt a great rift form between them, greater than the gorge that had formed when they first started this conversation. "Go on," Horo-sha urged her when she didn't finish. "I am what to you?" "You are. You are the Ronin and you are Horo-sha." It was the last designation that had any meaning between them. that had any fondness to it. Riko had first called her by that name. She had gone by Ronin for so long. At least Horo-sha was her name, unlike Ronin, which was only an offhanded address. Horo-sha felt as if she had reverted in Nico's eyes to an outsider who had come to solve a case for her husband. "It is fine," Horo-sha said. "I am a Ronin, one who was but a stranger to you less than a week ago. I am not your friend, and I am definitely not a member of your family or household. I have solved both cases that I took on, so I should be on my way. Before I go, I have to see Musum." "I have to?" "You have to what?" Nico questioned with directed anger. "Since I showed leniency to my daughter, you now have to execute some sort of punishment on her. Is that how you see me?" Horo-sha asked. "You see me as some vengeful Ronin?" The mistress of the manor didn't answer her, so she said, "I have to know that you and your family will be safe when I leave. I have to talk to her." Nico considered what to do and told her, "The White Lily residence. It is located in the center of the west wall. Emery can take you." Soul of doubt. I fear what the future will bring. What jealousy has already set in motion. Chapter 61. A prison of doubt. The White Lily residence. Emery motioned to the building in front of them, and then the housekeeper turned and left. 2 guards watched over the residence, and they nodded to the Ronin as she walked by. Horo-sha entered and found Lady Rai sitting on floor pillow. Musum had her head on Lady Rai's lap, and the older woman was stroking the kitchen girl's hair. "Kaioi." Musum spoke as if her name had become poisonous to her. Horo-sha said nothing as the kitchen girl sat up and then stood and approached her. She thought Musum might hit her or at least slap her across the face, but the kitchen girl did none of those things. "Why are you here, Kaioi?" She wasn't sure how to answer. Horo-sha was afraid of what the future held for this household if Musum stayed. "Why are you here, Kaioi?" Again, she didn't have an answer, so she focused on the case that had been mostly solved. Horo-sha questioned, "Right before or right after you tried to drown Samba, did you push Nico?" "Oh, I see. Can't let things go? You have to know everything." "Fine. I did," Musum admitted. "I laid a simple trap. I needed Lady Evening Vanilla to fall into some mud I had freshly made. I pushed her from behind, but she fell harder and easier than I expected. At that time, I also planted the white horsehair. Do you have any more questions for me? What are your future plans for this family?" "Oh," Musum smiled and said, "I understand now. You are afraid that I will gain their trust once again and then slit all their throats while they sleep." Horo-sha glanced at Lady Rai, who remained on her floor pillow. She also noticed that Samba must have tended to the wounds caused by having her mouth sewn together. She turned her attention back to the older girl and told her, "Hado force-fed you a bitter pill of jealousy until you were as bitter toward Nico as she was." Musum pointed a finger at her and said, "The case didn't bring you here. You are here for another reason. You are here because..." The older girl's eyes lit up in pleased surprise as she declared, "You are jealous of me." Horo-sha thought about denying it, but then she admitted, "I am very jealous of you. You have something that I don't have." "What is that?" "You have a mother who is alive. You have a mother who wants to give you a second chance." Horo-sha's heart saddened as she realized something she had only seen glimpses of, and she started to say, "But there are no buts. You are jealous." Her but wasn't about the jealousy. Her but was about what Musum could do to those she cared about. The power she had. The hatred she still clung to. Musum could destroy everything. Horo-sha needed for her to understand, and her words weren't reaching her. So she grabbed her hands and held them tight as she said, "If you harm or cause someone else to harm anyone of your family, I know," Musum interrupted as she felt the wrath and fear within her grasp. "You will take up your sword of revenge again and track me down and enact your own sense of justice." "I will," Horo-sha promised her. "I will devote my life to this endeavor if you should hurt any of them." Musum laughed as she slapped her hands away, and then she became serious and said, "I know you will do just that and you will succeed. I believe if your bloodlust was ever loosed, really loosed, you would be an unstoppable revengeful force." She glared at the younger girl and asked, "Is there anything else you want to tell me?" "Fear haiku, insecurities, nightmare of waking moments, heart devastating." Chapter 62. What's left to say? There was plenty more she wanted to tell Musum. She wanted to scream at her for murdering people. She wanted to yell at her for ever pretending to be her friend. Horo-sha wanted. She would not get what she wanted, so instead of yelling, Horo-sha nodded to Musum. She got choked up as she began to explain, for what she was about to tell the kitchen girl also affected her. "I was going to tell you. You have a mother who is alive, but I fear not for very long, because you are afraid that I am going to kill her. I know. You already threatened me. Nico is sick. Very sick." Horo-sha continued her explanation. "Samba has been treating her as best as she can, but I fear the disease she has will win." "You are lying." "I am not. Nico has severe headaches and she has been falling a lot. Samba has been treating her with acupuncture and herbal remedies. I don't believe there is a cure for what she has. I don't even know if there is a name for what she has. Musum said nothing, so Horo-sha added, Nico is dying. Your mother is dying. Musum remained quiet as she forgot about the Ronin and focused on Nico. Horo-sha said, you have to decide whether to fulfill Hato's revenge. Fulfill your own desire to hurt Nico for abandoning you, or spend what time she has left with her as a mother and daughter. You have a chance I was never given. You have a chance to get to know the woman who gave birth to you. Why should I care? She is going to die anyway. She is going to leave me as Hato left me. Be selfish, Horo-sha snapped at her as she lost control of her emotions. You are very invested in this family, Musum said, and then asked, why don't you be her daughter and let me play the villain? She seriously considered her offer. What would her life be like if Nico took her in as her daughter? Adoptions were common. Horo-sha never had a mother to care for her. Though, she did have the priestess and her sister, Sakura, and they both took care of her as if they were her mother. Musum had made the suggestion in spite and to drive the blade of discord further into the Ronin's side. But when she saw that Horo-sha was actually considering it, she realized she didn't want to give up Nico. Hato was dead. Lady Rai was still alive. But Horo-sha wouldn't have her child-abandoning mother. Lady Evening Vanilla will never have you as a daughter, Musum declared. I know, Horo-sha spoke. She doesn't even want me as a friend. The Ronin turned and headed toward the exit. Horo-sha had said everything she had come to say, and there was nothing else left to do but to leave the Gaka Estate. Musum watched her leave and her heart sank. She had been cruel to the Ronin while performing her duties for Hato, but even in the midst of the scheme, Musum still found someone with as clever of a mind as hers. I wait for your return, Ronin. One day soon or one day in the distant future. You will return, and I will be here waiting to outwit that apt mind of yours. And I, Horo-sha spoke as she turned around. ... will be eager to see what you have done with your life. Will you continue to hurt people or will you use your gifts to help people? Life lessons from T. Traveling like T is best done light. Take only what you need for your trip. Chapter 63. Gathering her things together. The White Lily residence's courtyard. Horo-sha wiped her eyes as she left the residence. She had done all that she could for the Gaka family. It was time for her to leave before she did something that she would regret. She turned and headed for the Red Lotus residence. She arrived some time later. Horo-sha gathered all of her things, including her Ronin gasa, the conical hat made from bamboo, and a few things Riko had left behind. Horo-sha peered outside at the hot springs. She had neglected one of her vices. She should have spent more time in the soothing and refreshing hot water. Horo-sha looked at the table where the teapot from yesterday remained. Her stomach growled. She was hungry, but she would eat somewhere in town. Horo-sha took one last look around and then left, walking the private path toward the south gate. She was halfway to the southeast corner of the estate when someone called. Ronin. Horo-sha turned and saw Nico in the distance. She turned her gaze from her and looked in the direction she had been going and thought about continuing. She would have no problems outrunning Nico. Ronin? She called again, but with more anger in her voice. She turned away from Nico and started for the stable. Ronin? She called again, but in desperation. She stopped, turned, and walked to Nico. She didn't say anything when she arrived. She let Nico do all the talking. Are you leaving? Horo-sha nodded. Was harsh before. Everything that has gone on here over the past few days. You have been a part of it, Nico spoke, and when the Ronin didn't say anything, she added, Horo-sha, you should not leave as we have left things. She had gained one of her names back. She was no longer just a Ronin, but someone who deserved to be called by their name. But it still wasn't enough for her. Wanderer. One who does not belong. Nico continued to wait for the young woman to say something, and when she didn't, when she only peered at her with her sad light green eyes, she spoke again. Horo, please talk to me. I am sorry for the things I said to you. Clever. She was once again clever in the eyes of her friend. She took a deep breath to stifle anxiety. She could be this person, the clever Ronin? Horo-sha asked. What things? Do I have to say what things? Nico asked. You have already said them. Say them again to tear them down if you don't mean them. Nico frowned, not at the young woman's demands, but that she would have to utter her wrong against her once more. I am sorry that I let you think that you don't mean anything to me. You are my friend, one that I cherish. Horo-sha felt so much better, and she said, I am sorry that I got angry with you for wanting to forgive your daughter and find her a place in your home as she has always had a place in your heart. She admitted, I do fear that Musum will hurt you. I am so afraid that her hatred of you is greater than the love she has for you. The love? I do know Musum loves you. I saw it when I spoke to her. You should know that I threatened her life. I will kill her if she does anything to you or your family. Yoke. Nico moved and wrapped her arms around the young woman. She had given the Ronin back the name that meant the most to both of them. She tried to explain to Horo-sha. I also see. I see in Musum part of me. I can be stubborn and cruel. I try to hide it well, or mostly try to hide it. You felt my vindictive side the last we met. She held Yoke tightly as she spoke. Musum is my daughter, and that will never change. I see in her the capacity to better herself. I know what she has done. My entire family has, but I talked it over with Eshi, Sora, and Itsuki. Eshi told them that she is their half-sister. We all talked it over. We are going to give her a chance. I even talked to Samba. She doesn't want to ever see Musum again outside of medical treatment, but she has agreed to live on the same estate with her as long as precautions are taken. The housekeeper or the steward will check on her every hour to make sure the guards are in place and she and Lady Rai are still within the residence. Nico pulled away and placed both of her hands on her face, and then Nico said, Musum has committed terrible crimes, and she will need to be punished for them. But she also needs to make up for them. I know you are afraid for us, but you should also be glad for us. Yoke, because of you, I am alive and I have my daughter in my life. I take back what I said before. You are a part of this family. You will always be a part of this family. You who put her house's name on the line to save me. I can never repay you for that. You can, Horo-sha said. You can make sure to live your life with no regrets. Yoke, you should stay a few more days, Nico insisted. Rest before you start your next case. Enjoy the hot spring, and I will have Emerald Dragon Empress tea with you. Horo-sha was like a child asking about her favorite cake as she inquired, Do you still have some? I do not, but I have placed an order. It could be here in a couple of days. I can stay a few more days, Horo-sha replied as if the tea and the tea alone convinced her. I should rest my apt mind before taking on whatever case is next. I will spend time with you, but I don't think I can spend any time with Musum. I am still so angry with her for what she did. I can understand that and I can accept that, Nico spoke. Soul of tea. I have found my bearings again. I know what direction I must go in as I know I love tea. Chapter 64. What lies ahead? The Red Lotus Residence. Nico had the cook brew up some specialty tea that used dates in the recipe. She, Samba, and Horo-sha enjoyed the tea within the Red Lotus Residence along with some wagashi. Horo-sha greedily ate most of the cakes as she had not had anything to eat that day. Nico and Samba left, and a few minutes later, Riko rushed in with the samurai detective in tow. The boy looked haggard as if he hadn't slept or ate much since he left. He said, Horo, I'm sorry it took me so long. You took just the right amount of time, she told him. Lord Tante spoke. I assume my help isn't needed anymore. I was able to solve this case with some assistance from those within his household, she told the samurai detective. You must tell me about the staring feline case and how you were able to solve it so easily, Lord Tante requested. Riko informed me of what he knew. You must also tell me about this second case. Have you given it a name? I have, she replied. I call it the Household of Death. Such an ominous name, the boy stated. Horo-sha proceeded to tell Riko and Lord Tante about the case and how it overlapped the staring feline case. She went into great detail, leaving out some things, but she did tell them about Hado, Musum, and Lady Rai after swearing them to secrecy. When she finished, she invited Lord Tante to stay with them, and he agreed and bunked with Riko, who seemed to have a better opinion of the old samurai since traveling with him. Another case dwelled in the future for her, and Horo-sha set her eyes on it. She did allow herself to rest, and Nico came twice a day to have tea with her while the three of them stayed an additional 3 days. Horo-sha kept her promise and did not see Musum again. The time came. She said all her bittersweet goodbyes and then headed for the town postings chief for her next case. The end. Check out more of Kristie Lynn Higgins audiobooks.